Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to the Flash Ops Echo Showdown Semifinals and Finals coming at you live from New Zealand. My name is Matt Pixie Carroll, and joined with me here, of course, is Kevin Averill Walker to bring you these excellent matches.
Hey, it's good to be here. Echo Showdown here, NA semifinals and finals. It's been a very interesting tournament. Hundreds of teams, hundreds of signups. Really big shout out and thank you to the community for banding together for this one to really show off Echo and show off, what we can do in Overwatch on this new patch with this new hero, and a bunch of great teams so far put on a great show.
And that is, of course, the key stipulation of the tournament, right? Every single team must have one dedicated Echo player on every single map. You can change who that player is from map to map, but Echo must be played at all times. And outside of that, there's actually no hero pool restrictions at all. So we're seeing a very different shape of game to what we've maybe been used to competitively for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a great environment for Echo to really, find her place in where the meta currently sits, where can she be really played. We've had pro players mixed with streamers, mixed with influencers, mixed with just regular community players, some ex-pros as well, some retired players coming back for this particular tournament. There's really a huge pool of different players coming back together to form some of these teams, and we've already had a fantastic day of competition. Everybody's just been thrown into one massive bracket across both NA and EU, and now we're getting down to the top four, at least for NA here. We're getting into the semi-finals pretty soon, and there's been, I think, a lot of favorites that are not actually here anymore. Probably the number one team to talk about is XQC's team, which already got knocked out earlier today, and now we're getting to the stage where, look, Test Team 1 is going to be making an appearance at some stage. That one's got Jake and Dante on it. There's still, a couple of other teams showing up as well. I'm sure that you'll be really surprised to see who's still in this tournament and who's not.
Yeah, and you get to see that in just a few moments. Before we get to that, though, to go over the format, for those who are unfamiliar with this one, it is the sort of standard best of five, first to three kind of situation. We'll be starting on Nepal, and then from there, the loser picks. All maps are available in the pool except for Paris and Horizon Lunar Colony, which I nearly just called Horizon Zero Dawn. Shows what I've been doing during the COVID lockdown. And also, just with regards to those teams, you sort of touched on it a little bit, but there is the restriction of only 2 Overwatch League or Contenders players allowed per team, which is part of why we're seeing a bit of that mix of both pros and then ex-pros, streamers, influencers, so on and so forth.
And that's where you get the really interesting competition specifically for this tournament so far. Like, we've got NA and EU on the line. Of course, we're going to be covering NA specifically today, and that's where, when we look at some of the past results that we've already talked about, XQC's team, the God Gaming Gang, he was actually on a team with Super. They got knocked out pretty early. Jake, Dante, and Fran are on a team together. You've had, Dogecoin that was in there with Nomi, who was an ex-Overwatch League player. KSF and Kragi and Kabaji are on a team that are still in the semi-finals. You have a decent mix of streamers banding up with pros. And really, what's been interesting is seeing how the pros have been managing Echo so far. What they can really do with her. Honestly, I think she's really strong as a hero currently, and when she actually hits the Overwatch League, I think that's going to change the game up quite a bit as well.
And you mentioned this as well, speaking of teams, speaking of rosters, our first semi-final today is going to be between Test Team 1 and Hog and Ball. With that, let's go ahead and take a bit of a look at those rosters, starting with Hog and Ball.
Yeah, so we got Karama, Track, Cowman, 711, 711, Fact Fiction, Carrots, and just see what the last one is, Liar. So, and on this team, probably the first person you look at has to be Fact Fiction. He's an ex-Overwatch League player, and he's also been around the contender circuit for a decent amount. He played on both. He played on Mayhem Academy, which is the team that he had great results on. He was also on the Houston Outlaws as well as the LA Valiant for some time as well. Currently, he's playing for a team called Revival. So that's probably the number one player that you look at. Then you got Track and Liar as well, who have been sort of around the block. Simplicity is the team that Track is currently on, and Liar is on Revival as well.
Speaking of around the block, looking at Test Team 1, I think there are a lot of names that can easily stick out to someone here. Of course, you got Jake, Dante, Harblue, Cloneman 16, Kariva, and Red Shell are going to be their starters. And I believe they have, they do have Franiata on the bench as well. So, I mean, it's all there writ large in the players on this team, right? Like, it's no surprise they're in the semifinals.
They got everybody. They got a huge roster of very notable names. I'm pretty sure everyone will know everyone on the squad. All 6 and 7 of them are pretty clear who's here. Jake and Dante obviously playing the DPS's they're going to be pretty hot. Karif's still a pro. He's going to be great as well.
And I think based on that, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this ends up playing out with that sort of echo factor being there as well. Like, obviously, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the DPSs specifically, and thanks to that, we're going to be getting into this game in just a few moments. I mean, before we do, like, are there any brief, sweeping things you want to say about what we might expect out of this?
I'm looking at Test Team 1 as being the easy favorites here. They have a very, very stacked team. Fax Fiction's probably the most notable player on Hog and Ball, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to carry them through. Test Team 1 versus Team Kick W is probably what we're looking forward to towards the finals here, but we could see an upset. We've already seen upset so far in the tournament, and that'll probably and maybe happen again.
Well, I'm already upset, but we are going to be opening the doors in just a few moments, and like I said, the same player must be on the Echo the entire time, which I think makes this interesting. Of course, Dante is going to be testing 1's Echo, but we've got Kurama over on Hog and Ball.
Alright, Nepal, Sanctum here. And the Echoes is really what we're looking out for here. What can Echo do now? Echo really shuts down tanks extremely quickly, and on this opening fight, you can already see that Hog and Ball getting straight in the faces of Test Team 1.
Yeah, this has been a really nice move in from Hog and Ball, just trying to push forward, trying to take ground. Test Team 1 trying to rotate back around, and now unfortunately a little bit split up, two halves of the team, and as it goes, divide and conquer. With Dante down, that's already a big opening. Even without getting any other kills, Hog and Ball can just start drifting off back towards the point. They need to not lose Kurama here, though. Maybe a little bit overextended. Those respawns are going to come in big for Test Team 1 now.
What you also see on both sides is the fact that we're seeing a lot of hit scan there. Pretty decent counter towards Echo. His opening camp does come through for the Hog and Ball, able to just deal with the aggression so well. Track going down, though, is going to make things somewhat difficult. This Hog and Ball still just trying to maintain control.
They should be able to push back on this one. I mean, it all started with the Kurama pickup there, just a little bit late on the rotation to pull back towards the point and then losing track not too long after. So that's a lot of early ground game by Hog and Ball that they've kind of lost now, but trying to push back in. That's a big pickup, knocking Cloman off and now able to disable the other tank in Harblue. That is what we're expecting out of the Echo. Dante getting into the thick of it, will trade off with track, but this is Hog and Ball. Oh my goodness, Test Team 1 don't want to give it up with any kind of ease. This has become an absolute slog on the point itself now. Echo versus Echo, Kurama coming out on top, and nobody has really won this fight yet.
It's going pretty back and forth at this stage. Both Echoes actually went down towards the middle there. Jake didn't get enough done on the Deadeye, but they still maintain control. Test Team 1 still have this point under lock, nearly at 40% now on that clock, on the capture point. With Hog and Ball, we're waiting to see what Kurama can do. We're waiting to see what Track is going to be able to do with his tank visor as well. Note that we're really close to duplicates on both sides.
I think the double duplicate is going to be very interesting and, dare I say, very messy if both get that up over the course of this fight. Dante will just barely lead on that one. Rotation in for Hog and Ball onto the point, looking to get something down on Harblue, who pops the minefield, but aside from that, it's just absolutely blasted down by the beam from Kurama. Now with the attack visor out, getting a lot of pressure in this open space. That is going to give Hog and Ball a lot of room on the point itself. Might even be able to complete this cap in a moment here.
We're seeing a lot of ultimates come up for Hog and Ball. This is where
this
is actually going to be coming through. Finally, Kurama is going to choose to actually duplicate the Orisa on the other ends. A lot happening on this particular point.
A bit of a mess to say the least, but it's just trades. That's the thing. This is so much just trades back and forth. The self-destruct finder coming out from the duplicated Diva will find Kurama in that. And as the dust settles, it looks like Test Team 1 will be able to get control of the point back. Hog and Ball to take it off them partway through that. Dante just finishing off last couple of members. Actually, might not quite swing it back the other way. The respawners are going to come in now for Hog and Ball. They're going to fight over this one. They do have control currently, and they want to at least drag the percentages out a little bit.
I want to see Red Shell coming back in as well. He's got the sound barrier available. Jake's trying to hold down the fort right now with his Deadeye, and with Test Team 1, they still have a decent advantage in terms of players here. Hog and Ball don't have a lot of time to try and get back into this one despite having a recap in.
Kurama really starting to pull his weight towards the tail end of that as well, just picking off a few extra members now, drilling down the tanks. This is Hog and Ball now are the ones staying on top of this brawl. It's actually Test Team 1 that are maybe just a little bit in too deep, kind of throwing bodies at the point for little gain. Finally, the reset will be forced.
Test Team 1 still barely in the lead in terms of percentages, but they're going to lose that pretty soon. Dante down, that could be the big difference here. Red Shell still has a sound barrier that he's just about to use, but we need to see Dante back in. Jake has to be the one to hold down the fort.
Big loss of track there, and Lyo as well going to drop so fast. That sound barrier from Red Shell more or less to cue the start of the fight, with Cowman having already been lost. There was a really big hit. Nothing they could do about that with that testing one. Regain control of the point, and there's not a lot of time for Hog and Ball to rally from this.
They really need to get back in pretty quickly. Fact Fiction has the only ultimate available for their team. And this is about the stage where both duplicates can come out. Last time, they both chose tanks. Dante actually went towards the Diva. Kurama obviously going towards the Orisa. And this is now going to be a position where Track, looking at the Deadeye as well, Liar, drops down the Ant Matrix.
Rotation around for Fact Fiction to get Minefield on the point, but I mean, that's not really where the fight is taking place right now. The brawl all around the fringes has been trades, endless trades back and forth. Jake able to get one off with the Deadeye, so critical. Lives on 3 hit points, and in all of that chaos, nobody on the point for Hog and Ball. Testing one will take that first round home.
86 to 100 though, it's fairly close so far. Note that Hog and Ball had a decent lead to start with. They actually got the opening cap. And, I mean, I think what we're seeing as well as the Echoes here is a big emphasis once more on the other DPS players in terms of actually playing the hit scans. McCree coming back out in full force. Track was on the McCree for a little bit as well. The other sort of co-DPS that we've seen across some of the other matches in the previous days, the Tracer's coming in as well to sort of play towards a bit of a dive kind of composition, and that's if you actually want to be able to combo that up with either a Winston or the Wrecking Ball that so far Harblue is being able to pick.
That's actually one place we've seen a big difference has been in that tank line-up, and with that, Hog and Ball, once again, they're going to roll out on Reinhardt, on Diva. Big shift up, if anything, is that Track is now looking to take the Tracer, which I really like, just Track and Tracer. It sounds good to me. Oh, that's an oof. Yikes, what happened there? Kurama down already. It is at least traded with Harblue, but it's a little bit of a dodgy start there for Hog and Ball.
Good news is Test Team 1 does have a second main tank here in the Clone Man 16. With Jake going down, though, things are going to get a little bit more difficult. Dante really needs speed to pull his weight to be able to get this opening cap. Hog and Ball are already on the point, though.
Yeah, really nice rotation to make that happen. Just pressuring down onto Testy. You saw the pick-off they got on Jake. That is a good trade off to find carrots, but unfortunately, Testy 1 do not have enough metal left to stand up on this point. Hog and Ball will be closing off that fight, finishing off the last few members, and getting that starting cap again. This time, far more stably than what they did on Sanctum.
They had that early lead, like you mentioned, on Sanctum, but they didn't hold it for that long. Let's take a look at the ultimates here. It's Liar back on the Ant Matrix. And really, this is the kind of composition that you don't have a lot to work with in terms of Ant Matrix, unless Kurama wants to stand behind it. Track's likely not going to be there. Fact Fiction will throw a Fly Strike through it, and you don't have a Zenyatta combo as well. And speaking of Track, he's going to go down super early.
That's really brutal. Just completely died. Obviously didn't have any kind of escapes or something, or maybe just fat-fingered something, and would have had a pulse bomb, so that's a really tough break. Also losing the Echo. That's a bit of an interesting shift there from Dante, I suppose, just looking to finish off that fight, maybe with minimal other resource usage. Back into the Echo now. They're going to have no trouble finishing this off. Have already gained the point throughout the course of that fight, so Testing 1 solidly in control now.
And all they had to do was come in, get a couple of opening picks. Track again is the first one. Actually went down to Harblue. Dante uses duplicate in the middle of that fight as well, goes towards the Rhine, gets a really early shadow, and this is kind of what you're looking for in terms of playing Echo. You're looking for which heroes can I duplicate and what kind of ultimates am I really looking for here. And once more, straight at the start of the fight, Track goes down.
Absolutely brutal on Track. Nice finding there from Jake with the flashbang and instant conversion with the kill. And I think Hog and Ball, they're kind of a little bit committed here. They need to maybe find a way to get out of this. Jake is going to go ahead, channel a Deadeye. Gonna wait out that mortality field. They do at least pick up Kurama on that, but that wasn't a huge amount of gain actually for Test Team 1. They're already in control of the point anyway.
Test Team 1 here. Let's take a look at what they got. A lot of ultimates on board. Now this is them slowly creeping ahead once more in terms of percentage points. We saw this onto Sanctum. Early leads from Hog and Ball that they couldn't convert to mid-game control. Kurama at least has a duplicate available, but Dante's nearly working on his second one at 86. It's looking like a pretty decent hold so far. It's the difference between playing with the Wrecking Ball plus the Orisa and the kind of control that offers versus opting for something more standard like a Diva and Rhine.
Curious to see what Kurama goes for here. A good pick on the Echo ultimate could really change the shape of this fight. Nice find on Harblue early. That's a real critical one. The lack of that minefield is going to mean a lot less area control over the point itself as Hog and Ball look to take some ground here. Supercharger and Sound Barrier, and actually Kurama decides he wants to more or less match that. Nice Earth Shadow on the flip side by Dante, but converting it. They are going to be able to get a few kills. few trades back, though, and again, these brawls are so incredibly endless. Test Team 1, though, are going to come out the better end of that. Jake putting in a lot of work throughout the course of that fight, and now at 95%, yeah, I more or less see them just sailing this one to victory. That minefield is on there, nobody can contest, full 100, and that is going to be Test Team 1 picking up our first map of the semi-final.
And I thought that Test Team 1 might be the favorite team walking into this, and you start to see the kind of difference in terms of both play quality and also what we're choosing for compositions. A big part of this, I have to actually say, is Dante on the Echo, specifically because he's been going for, a lot of the times, choosing to go for the Rhine duplicate. He's able to get very quick Earth Shatters. If you look at what's going on at the opposite end for Hog and Ball, you have Kurama mostly going for the Orissas. He doesn't have the same kind of options available. What do you really want to pick if you are Kurama? The next best pick might be something like maybe Jake's McCree, or potentially the Diva. Sorry, they didn't even have Diva. Or potentially, you know, you're looking at the Harblu's Raking Ball or something like that, but he doesn't have the same kind of quality of options, which is why when I look at the Echoes here and look at who's got what playing on which hero, Dante's had a much better, you know, position to choose very effective heroes to duplicate.
I think that's been a big factor in a lot of these fights where we've seen even just one of the Echoes have an ultimate available, let alone both. Like, we are on balance seeing Dante just getting a lot more mileage, first of all, out of his picks, but also, like you said, having more and often better options for what he can go into with that duplicate as well. I think that's been quite an interesting factor, but I think resetting has been a little bit patchy for both of these teams. Like, Sanctum was very heavy on that side. Like, the teams just kind of brawled endlessly with neither really getting the upper hand, neither team really willing to just straight up take a reset, come in for another go, and that ended up just totally being to the detriment of Hog and Ball, who didn't have control of the point throughout most of that brawling time.
I look at Jake as well as being the other big factor for Test Team 1. The kind of effectiveness that he had on McCree so far has been pretty huge in terms of the fact that you look at what's happening on the other end. Hog and Ball, Track has been playing a lot less McCree. He eventually goes on McCree towards the end of each round, but it's coming in pretty late. He starts on something like the Soldier 76, he starts on something like the Tracer, and both of those have not been super effective. We've seen a number of fights now where, especially on the Tracer, he actually got picked out super early, even when they had control of the point, even when they were ahead, and that's been costing them a few fights now.
We also saw, like, right at the start, we didn't see it anywhere near as egregiously since then, but it has been a slight factor. We saw Kurama get picked out on the Echo quite early on Sanctum. Like, after all that ground was gained, this is a part of, like, what went wrong a bit for Hog and Ball. They got the early point, they got not quite winning the early fight, but they got a lot of pressure, they got a pick, and then Kurama got picked off, and they just didn't have enough members left to hold on to the point. Like, the respawns had come in, it was a 6v5, then Track goes down, and, like, it's not like we're seeing Kurama getting picked out all the time or anything like that, but certainly has seemed a lot more exposed, certainly than his counterpart in Dante, for one thing, but also just, like, with respect to the rest of the team, we have seen both the DPSs, Kurama and Track, getting just picked out a lot more than either Jake or Dante.
And Test Team 1 has had a pretty clean run through the tournament so far. You know, I wouldn't say they've beaten too many notable teams, just trying to look through a few of their results. You know, they beat a team, I mean, who did they beat just now? Bulldozer was the last team they beat. Looking at that roster, to see if there's any real notable names. Mudkip and Lep is probably the only two there that you may not even really heard too much of. Skyfox's players. You look at this kind of matchup here where, look, Hog and Ball have Fact Fiction on them, they have a few contenders level players, but for the rest of Test Team 1, to be honest, it's so stacked that, you know, composition, it's one thing, but player quality, I think, is the other big thing to talk about.
Well, and the other thing to talk about is, of course, that is only 1-0 up for Test Team 1. It is a first 2-3, so there's still a little ways to go. Hog and Ball, plenty of opportunity to turn around, and they have picked Watchpoint Gibraltar. It is, of course, Hog and Ball's pick, being the losing team. I'm curious to see two particular things. First of all, if they bother changing the player that is going to be playing the Echo. They are allowed to change it between maps. I don't anticipate many teams doing that, but it is an option if they maybe want to see how Track will fare, for example.
One change that actually did come through is Fran coming in instead of Red Shell, and the Red Shell is mainly known to be mostly a Lucio one-trick for his... mainly a Lucio one-trick on his stream. So coming into this now map, the second one, Watchpoint Gibraltar, we have Korea on the Ana, which is typically Fran's pick, to be fair, as well, but Kareev is, you would say, an extremely good flex support player. Fran mainly overlaps with his hero pool slightly, so we'll see if that makes any difference here. Fran's going to be picking up the Batiste. Dante is still going to be on the Echo, and you really have to look at the Echo player as being possibly the most flexible player on your entire team, because the duplicate is going to really test your limits.
Well, doors opening, testing one on the defense first, and we're actually seeing Track once again roll out on the Soldier to start with. Just contesting a little bit of that high ground for now, nothing too spicy, all pretty standard.
This is the kind of game where I expect Kurama to maybe start to look for duplicates on Jake and Sebi. He's got Hanzo now, very spammable. Dante receiving a lot of pressure on his end, and he's the one that needs to be careful because he's been doing a lot of carrying power.
Hablu. That's a nice big opening. Removing Hablu is going to remove a lot of the counter pressure that Test Team 1 could pull out. They're now just kind of sitting ducks in behind that Orisa shield, which is useful, don't get me wrong, but Hog and Ball should be able to get a lot of free ground off this.
They've already managed to get this car through the car wash section. Track now actually starting on the McCree is a big change up for their team as well. Carrots going down is going to make things at least somewhat difficult. Looking at the ultimate charge, Dante's very far ahead, and Kurama's in a bit of trouble himself.
Jake out on the hard zone nearly managed to get that finish off on Kurama, but not quite able to duck back behind the heel. But Hablu sniffs it out, able to finish that one off. And Cowman as well with the anti-nade. Jake also finding a nice headshot, and suddenly it all just falls apart for Test Team 1. I mean, even with Kurama down, like they were in a tough position. They were a little bit pressured, but could have maybe just held out for a little bit. But no, absolutely flattened after that initial pick there.
This is all starting from that initial pick. We've seen a few times now, even on Nepal. One pick that gets converted very quickly by Test Team 1 into a team fight win. Carrots going down. Kurama getting super low. Track as well getting super low. And then Hog and Ball just get pushed off the cart. Test Team 1 go for collapse. And now, look at Hablu. He's already doing a lot of damage.
Oh, slam dunk onto Track. That is brilliantly done. Once again, we see Track first person to go down. Dante finds himself a little bit too exposed, a little bit too long. Was maybe banking on that duplicate coming in. But honestly, with the rest of the pressure on Hog and Ball, I imagine Test Team 1 are going to have more than enough time to wait for the respawns back up and take a full 6v6 again.
They're going to be on full stack as well. Nearly 6 ultimates. Cart is now slowly rolling backwards. And Hog and Ball need to make a lot more progress here. 2 minutes remaining as Dragon Strike goes through.
Hablu under a little bit of heat right now. Zlaya has kept the team nicely alive using that Transcendence, but Hog and Ball don't have a lot of else to use. With Cowman under pressure, the stun to finish off, he will be demech'd as Fact Fiction gets dropped. Something with no tank line. I don't see Track and Kurama surviving for all that much longer, especially not if Hablu has anything to say about it. They can have no trouble finishing off the rest of this, and that was a really cheap fight for Test Team 1. Like, even though they used 3 ultimates, one of those is nearly back up on Jake, and they've still got 3 others on the rest of their members.
Okay, we're looking at more of a dive comp now. Hog and Ball are changing up a few of their members. Carrots is already onto the Brigida, coming over from Batiste. Fact Fiction is now on the Winston as well. They just want to be able to get into these fights very quickly. Dante, if he goes down, that's a big problem because he has the ultimate.
That's so critical. Nice trade-off finding Fact Fiction, though, and Track and Kurama under so much pressure that they're having a hard time getting anything done. And honestly, on the whole, between the two of them, they have struggled to penetrate this Orisa shield. We're just seeing more and more of that. Nice late catch on Track, though. With the respawn times, they should have a window here before Jake is back with the team.
They need to start moving, though. They haven't aggressed back onto objective. They're still trying to take high ground away from Orisa. Difficult to do. Hablu's going to go in very quickly, though. This is going to block out any potential for Hog and Ball.
Cowman is at least able to get the self-destruct in there, preserves his own life for one thing. They actually take out a good number of structures with that, but Dante finding Carrots, and I mean, they're just struggling to have the mileage on this. Kurama back into the regular Echo, went into Orisa using the duplicate, but hasn't got much done with it. Pickoff finally coming in on the Batiste. That's no immortality field, but Jake has made his way all the way back to the thick of it, gets the Dragon Strike across, takes out Liar, and it all falls apart once again for Test Team 1. Less than 20 seconds remaining.
And they have barely enough time even just to get back onto this objective. Hog and Ball have to use the only 2 ultimates available. Note that Dante still has a duplicate. He hasn't even used it yet. Kurama down so early, an initial 6v5. I don't know if they can get this.
Absolutely brutal. It's looking really rough for Hog and Ball. They're going to have the dog pile onto this. Maybe if Track can get like the sickest Deadeye ever. And even then, it's going to be a tall order. Fact Fiction pressure around the side. They did at least find Hablu, but this is where Test Team 1 can lean into some of those ultimates they have. The rally is nice from Carrots. They also have Transcendence, but they need to get a lot out of the little that they have. And Cowman already demech'd. Dante just having fun on Diva with the Echo. Should be going back into their Echo in just a hot second, but the self-destruct will come out first. Doesn't find anything around the front. Track finds 2! That's going to be able to keep Hog and Ball in the fight. Even with them bleeding so many members out, they've got the DPSs in the mix, and finally they are enabled with their backs against the wall. They will finally find the point.
And this Pixie is where Track finally doesn't get pressured out super early. He's been mainly dying quite a decent amount. Okay, it's not just him, but he's having to fall back quite early. He gets a position to be able to get a double Deadeye this time, not No one's really there to stop him. Dante was on the Diva for a while, but his duplicate already ran out, and he wasn't in a position to fly in and get the Matrix to be able to pressure him through. Now Hoggenball, despite not having a lot of time, finally do get the cap and move on towards B.
They've got the right ultimates up here as well. They've actually got some really good ultimates for pressuring and making some extra space. Also got a nice pick on Harblu. Should be able to follow it up here. They are able to get the Immortality Field down, so they will be able to pull back just a little bit. But I'm waiting for that Primal Rage from Fact Fiction to just keep things rolling here. They're going to go ahead and commit to the fight. Kurama indeed barely lives. I think I saw as low as 2 hit points, but finds Dante. And in that test, Team 1 have already started to fall apart on this. Hog and Ball doing an excellent job of keeping momentum on their side.
They've actually nearly capped as well. This fight's been going long enough. It's sort of pseudo fight for Test Team 1. Where neither team really committed to hard. Hog and Ball really able to collapse Test Team 1. That's still happening right now as they're respawning. This will give them even more room to work with, even more pressure to be able to put against this defense. And for Test Team 1, despite having 5 ultimates, they've not really had a good chance to use them. They've always had a couple of members down on towards that B defense. That's not allowed them to take an actual team fight.
Hog and Ball, having capped that, making their way towards the 3rd point. They may cap this yet, because that 2nd point cap actually went so well. They've got a good bit of time to maybe finish this map off here. Have recovered quite significantly, and also a lot of ultimates. Going to cue the fight off with the rally, and a very aggressive Transcendence. They're trying to dogpile onto these members that they managed to bring low. They need to get rid of that Immortality Field. Finally have it, and as soon as they do, Test Team 1 just falls to bits. Track did get picked off in the middle of things there, but Dante's got a lot of work to do if he wants to turn it back around. Kurama rather has something to say about that, and with that, Hog and Ball again keeping the momentum on their side, more or less.
Harblu now changing over to the Sigma. Look, Dante still has a duplicate available, and the cap has not entirely gone through. We have Test Team 1 retaking control of the card itself just towards the end of that fight. 145 remaining, 144 now. For Hog and Ball, they still have a couple of opportunities to get back into this. Ultimate's coming online for them as well. Track now moving over towards the Soldier.
Yeah, recognizing that if they stayed around the cart, the respawn timers were going to start working against them, so Hog and Ball smartly backed off, have regrouped. Now they need to find their way in. That's a big rough one on Calman, but self-destruct. It's going to be able to create some space for them as Fact Fiction looking to go in deep. They're trying to make the most of this. Unfortunately, having lost Kurama, they're going to have a hard time getting more work done. At least traded with Jake for now, but Dante is going to make it a lot harder for Hog and Ball to get anything else done towards this back line. But as I say that, they managed to find Harblu Sigma anyway. Hog and Ball might just do this yet as they drop Dante. Even without the Echo, even without Kurama, Track has been enabled. They're getting the work done. They have the damage output now. Transcendence towards the point with the Immortality Field dispatched off. I think they're going to be able to do this. They just need to keep a handle on these respawners.
And Harblu's the only one still trying to keep things alive. Jake's there as well, but they don't have the numbers. They're just lacking the members here. If they can maybe force us for a few more seconds, just delay as long as possible. Track on the high ground as well is basically going to end this push.
Yeah, there's almost no way for them to get out of the space. Even the Immortality Field gets finished off so damn fast. 30 seconds to go. A little bit over. Not even going to quite force the overtime. A really nice recovery by Hog and Ball, who were about 10 seconds away from getting full held. And even in that final fight on the A stretch, started with them losing a member. That was so huge for Hog and Ball.
Yeah, when I say ending the push, by the way, I really mean ending Test Team 1's last initial attempt to defend that, because they didn't have much to work with towards the end. 33 seconds remaining from a position, like you mentioned, they were nearly completely held on point A. One of the big changes for me is actually the compositional change from Hog and Ball. The fact that they actually started going towards more of a dive team. You did see Carrots moving onto the Brigadier. You saw Fact Fiction go onto the Winston as well. I also think, looking at that kind of composition, it made things slightly more difficult for Dante to choose. He started going towards Fact Fiction's Winston there, getting himself early Primal Rages, but even when you saw towards the end, he got burnt down super fast on the Primal Rage, goes back into the Echo form, and then dies immediately as well. As a reminder that Echoes here do get a full heal when they A, transform into the new hero, and B, transform back into Echo, but he couldn't quite survive long enough. Jake on the Hanzo as well, decent on A, but really started to fall off when we moved towards C. Jake's been doing much better on the McCree, and maybe he needs to start looking at that again.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he rolls out on the Hanzo at the very least to start with, just because you can get a lot of that early pressure, spam down some shields, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to work out, because Hog and Ball aren't really leaning back into shields. They're wanting to stay mobile. They found that that Winston Diva was working for them, and they seem to want to stick with that.
Sticking onto Soldier 76 as well. Now, Track already played this on Sanctum. It was decent. I hazard to say that it was extremely effective. Now, Track towards the end of that game, good, because he had Attack Visor. We'll see what he can do before the ultimate becomes available though.
Pablo gets the mighty wrap around. I'm going to be able to pick off Kurama with the help of Jake, so that is a nice opener. Jake needs to watch his neck a little bit, but he is going to survive on a grand total of 8 hit points before getting topped off. But this is already such a clean push here from Test Team 1.
Hog and Ball just finding it hard to find the entry. Kurama going now super early. That's a major here they need to work with on this particular dive. In fact, that's the only real dive here they have to work with, as Dante is really just shredding through tanks as fast as possible. Test Team 1 in a decent position here. Habu just needs to be careful with his own life.
I mean, it's night and day, isn't it, right? Kurama gets picked off because of a good rotation from Hablu. Dante, on the other hand, has absolute free reign, and we're seeing that pay off for them. They pick off Braniata here. Actually, that's Kurama able to get in. Now suddenly things have stalled up, just as things were looking good for Test Team 1. A little bit of a reset being forced. Cowman, though, going to get demech'd. Track getting pressured on. Laya having to commit to keep everyone alive, but unfortunately with Track already down, that might be a hot second too late. This is Test Team 1. Harblu rolling back in, looking to just finish off the remnants of Hog and Ball now.
That actually needed to be a recovery there for Test Team 1 because they lost Fran super early. Dante didn't use the ultimate, so he actually couldn't heal himself, or he could have healed himself, but didn't use the duplicate. And then you had to see Harblu and Clone try and hold down that fort. They're still there. Clone's still alive. Fran uses the invincibility field. And for Test Team 1 now, this is now a slightly difficult Track with attack visor.
Nice pick up there by Kurama to find the Clone Man out, and they've managed to recover a little bit here with big thanks to Fact Fiction. Able to take that fight just a little bit before the cap coming through. Harblu has at least zoned everyone off the payload, which allowed them to get a few extra meters, but really that's a consolation prize. Hog and Ball have finally managed to have a more advantageous fight and have regained control of this defensive position.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. No, actually, never mind about that. Test Team 1 is actually going to change over a little bit.
I was looking forward to
Jake is going over to the McCree. Harblu's changing over to the Hog. Now, this is maybe slightly... There is a plus and minus here. There's pros and cons to this because you're now going to see Kurama most likely going towards Harblu's Hog on every single duplicate, which he has available now. And we look at the time remaining. At least a couple of pushes for Test Team 1, but if they're not too careful, they could get hell here on 8 as well.
Oh, Clone Man in big trouble as he eats an Orb of Discord and isn't able to make it out, isn't able to get shields down rapidly enough to cover his retreat. And with only the Hog there was no co-tank to help him out. Dante into the Diva. Man, that Clone Man is wishing he had that a moment ago. Going to be able to run down Carrots, though. Nicely found out by Dante, but with that, a lot more work that needs to be done now. Test Team 1 still looking to get aggressive, but they've lost a lot of members here. Hog and Ball sitting tight on this defense. Only a minute left on the clock now as Test Team 1 are going to have another very slow reset.
The ultimate's used on both sides as well. Looking at Test Team 1 now, look, they got a couple of combos here that you can really rely on. One is going to be the supercharger coming from Clone Man. For Yada as well, the Ant Matrix can drop. That's going to add a ton of damage for both sides. Look, Jake's going to be the main damage dealer here. Dante doesn't currently have a duplicate available. He's unlikely to be the one to really take use of the Amplification Matrix, so I'm looking at Jake. He's close to Deadeye. He's been fragging out on Nepal, and he needs to do the same now in Gibraltar.
Alright, Test Team 1, now is the time to put the foot down. Show us what you can accomplish. Kurama taking suppression. Nice find out on Track. That's so big. That is the opening for Test Team 1 as they pop the supercharger down. Just need to duck and hide from that self-destruct, but Cowman down anyway, so he won't remech that trade-off with Jake. More than happy for Test Team 1 to take that, I imagine, as they find out Liar. They finish off Carrots, and it looks like with that, they're going to be able to cap the point. Keep in mind, though, with the way the timing works out, they're actually capping this roughly the same time that Hog and Ball did on their own offense. So now Hog and Ball, if they can defend a little bit better through B and C, might be able to run down the clock for Test Team 1.
And this is a very, very close attack to what we saw from Hog and Ball's initial attack as well. Running out of time onto A, and now they can do the same onto B. Test Team 1, they really need to make up for lost time the same way Hog and Ball did on their initial attack too.
I feel like Hog and Ball had to work a lot harder for that, though, on the defense compared to Test Team 1. But they showed that they can do that hard work, and now we're seeing that again. A quick rally on the defense. Test Team 1 will not get the same kind of momentum on their offense through B as what Hog and Ball did. Hog and Ball have already come in, already picked off some members, already retaken possession of the card, and now Kurama, late pick on Dante. These teams decide they're not done. Jake wants to come back in and try find one with the Deadeye, but honestly, that might be a little bit of an overcommitment here on Test Team 1, who were still kind of resetting throughout all that.
I think they're really feeling the pressure here, and this is where I agree with you. They probably have to look for a much bigger reset. They're going to be forced to reset here if they want to wait for Jake. Ultimates are available on both sides. You need to start looking at the supports as well. Both of the others actually have the Transcendence available. And this is where Test Team 1 dropping their Ant Matrix again. They want to find positioning, and they're going to get shattered.
I don't get it. They just don't want to stop. Harblu got low. Look, they can rescue that with the Transcendence, and that is exactly what they have now done, but only just getting Jake back into the mix, and it's not like they've made a lot of ground against Hog and Ball. All they did was bought themselves time to get a full 6v6. Now they have that 6v6 without ultimates at their disposal. Hog and Ball do, and they have the superior positioning, having no trouble running over these members of Test Team 1, just picking them off bit by bit. All that Test Team 1 have accomplished there is running their own clock down.
And I'm concerned about the ability for Test Team 1 now to get this cap at all, and even if they do, if we get to C, they're not going to have much time to work with. They need to get a full cap regardless to actually be competitive in the time bank, and there's 33 seconds on the board minimum for Hog and Ball. For Test Team 1, I just don't know. They're looking at about 40 seconds remaining. If they cap B, they basically have to be able to walk through C somewhat uncontested. They can maybe make a couple of mistakes there, force one reset, but even one reset can really cost them because we're starting to look at momentum shifting. We're looking at ultimates being shifted towards the defender side as well for Hog and Ball.
This has been really interesting, I think, on the whole. It feels like once Hog and Ball start hitting their stride, start sort of getting ahead of Test Team 1 just in terms of how they're playing, how they're positioning, and who they're able to pick off and prioritize. They're just getting a lot more done. We do have that pause resolved now, so just getting straight back into the thick of it. Only 30 seconds left for Test Team 1 here.
Carrots needed to go down. He actually ate a sleep, but he used the immortality field, so he doesn't die. Kurama, though, is going to be the one to finally go down. That means that there is a position here for a 6v5. With Dante traded, that door closes as soon as it opens.
It just doesn't get any better for Test Team 1, and also with Karib down on the backside, their track uncontested on this high ground. They tried to send up Harblu to kind of do something about it, but he wasn't really able to. He found Carrots, but that's just not enough at this point. They need to get a lot more. They're getting nothing at all. This is going to be all she wrote as Hog and Ball with an ironclad defense there. Well, look, we said after the first map the series is far from over, and Hog and Ball have absolutely, utterly, and unequivocally proved that. Hog and Ball really showing up.
And this is, I think, the fear for a team like Test Team 1, where you know you have a very stacked team, you know your team's really good. Looking at Nepal only, you would assume that this was going to be a very simple matchup, but then you start to get into Gibraltar. A was a very good defense on both sides, and towards the end of A, you start to still remaining to believe that Test Team 1 was going to be the easily superior team. But from B onwards, seeing how dominant Hog and Ball could be, particularly on the B push, walking into C, and then their own A defense being absolutely solid, going towards a B defense that was unbreakable, this is where you now can start to really believe that Hog and Ball can make the upset happen.
It's to sort of draw a bit of a parallel here, like when Test Team 1 were winning, when they were winning fights, either because they were just more successfully attacking or they were preventing attacks, they looked like they were just totally outclassing Hog and Ball, right? Like, Hog and Ball looked like they were in all the wrong places at all the wrong times. We kept seeing DPSs getting picked off, Kurama overexposed, track getting found out, and just too much pressure on the tanks. The tanks were not getting enough done. But then, conversely, when we were seeing Hog and Ball win, Test Team 1, like, the weaknesses, the cracks really started to appear. I think there were several fights there where they didn't reset at what might have been more opportune moments. They sort of continued to commit, almost expecting that eventually Hog and Ball would just, I don't know, collapse or run out of steam, or they would get one of those picks on someone like Kurama or Track, but it never happened, right? And when it didn't happen, Hog and Ball were having no trouble at all keeping a lid on Test Team 1, who oftentimes were doing themselves no favors.
I gotta really...
With that...
Yep. No, sorry, you go.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Quick thoughts, please.
Quick thought is that Track actually made Soldier 70 look pretty decent. He made Soldier 76 kind of work towards that B defense, and honestly held down the fort, so good on him.
That was quick indeed. And with that, speaking of quick, we're going to be taking a quick break here before we get into the second half of our match. All things are tied up, even Stevens. It has to go one way or the other, though. Which way it will go? Well, you'll have to find out right after this. Thank you for sticking with us through that brief break. I hope you had just enough time to go to the bathroom and make like the first half of a sandwich. You'll be able to make the second half before the finals start. And we are back. We are halfway through our series here between Test Team 1 with Hog and Ball. Test Team 1 and Hog and Ball. Sentences are hard. And if you're just tuning in, I am, of course, Matt Pixie Carroll. Joining with me here is Kevin Averill Walker. This is the Flash Ops Echo Showdown, where, funnily enough, we are here to showcase and show down on Echo.
We've seen a lot of action through Echo already, and actually what's interesting to me, as well as Echo, seeing how everyone else plays around her. What does everyone else want to pick? How do they want to play their players? What kind of strategies are we seeing so far? In this particular matchup, it's mainly been the Dante Echo with the Jake on the McCree. They've been kind of hard forcing McCree. Now, part of the theory behind this is that hit scans have been most effective at shutting down Echo so far, which is why you also see Track move between either the McCree or the Soldier 76. And I kind of talked down Soldier 76's effectiveness earlier on, but a Track actually showed that on Watchpoint Gibraltar, 76 can still be pretty decent.
Yeah, a lot of mileage out of that pick. And sort of on the other side of that, just because you brought up Jake and Dante, obviously Track and Kurama being the Echo player, like Derry said, without wanting to speak ill of the gentleman, like, we haven't felt Kurama's presence as much as we've felt Dante's, certainly. But on the other side of that, like, when we've noticed Track, when we've felt Track's presence, it has been huge. Of course, we are all tied up. Loser of the previous map, which was Test Team 1, picks the next one, and they're looking to take us to King's Row.
And I'll be honest, speaking of Kurama here, because you did bring him up, what I did notice towards the end of Watchpoint Gibraltar is the fact that he stopped picking the Orisa as the duplicate target. He started to pick Jake's McCree instead, and I think he found a lot more effectiveness there. Usually, I would say, look, if you are at Echo, picking a tank is a pretty clear-cut idea because you get a lot of HP, you can get ultimates very effectively. Tanks have really great ultimates, so it does make sense. However, if the choices are like Orisa and Wrecking Ball, those are not really great choices for an Echo to go towards. Looking at what Test Team 1 are running now, we have Harblu on the Zarya. Cloman was considering Ryan. Those are both great duplicate targets, and the Winston is still pretty decent as well.
Yeah, I think, in fact, the Zarya is maybe the one I'm more interested in, because that's the interesting thing about Echo, right? Like, as much as this isn't going to totally change what you do and don't run, you do want to pick things with respect to the fact that their Echo is able to copy them. You almost don't want to let them get something too good, but you also don't want to take something good away from yourself.
And I think Zarya is going to be one of the top duplicate targets just because of how quickly you can get the Graviton Surge,
Yeah.
Test Team 1 now. Notice that Red Shill has stepped back in front of Fran, who's back on the bench for now.
Also, Track out on the McCree looking to match Jake more or less. So they slowly but surely edge their way towards the point. Bit of a dog fight between Dante and Kurama as the pressure coming down on the point itself. No one quite getting the better end of it, but oh, great sleep on Fact Fiction. Huge biotic grenade. That's surely going to open the door for it, and it absolutely does. In fact, it doesn't just open the door, it kicks it down. It throws a battering ram at it. You don't throw battering rams, but imagine that Test Team 1 did, and with that, they're going to be able to cap the point in an absolute screamer of a time.
Well, if you could throw one, Dante's the trebuchet that just throws that battering ram straight into the castle walls. What you actually see there is focusing on Fact Fiction's shield. Once it's below 50% HP, use the focusing beam to knock that straight down, and then all the bio-nades, the sleeps, and everything else comes through. Test Team 1 is still pushing forward now. They've got Liar again, and this is going to make things very difficult for Hog and Ball.
Oh, Kurama barely slipping out of the way of fire there. That's really critical here for Test Team 1. They're taking so much ground, still looking to go even further. They know they still have an advantage here. Crashing in, finding Fact Fiction, finding Kurama and Carrots. It all falls apart. Even with losing Harblu, which normally would mean you can't keep pressuring this far forward, they're still able to get away with it. By the way, that was with 5 members. They're still pushing the car.
And that's all Dante putting so much pressure on the tanks. We've mentioned this earlier, but Echo is a tank shredder. You saw how fast Fact Fiction's HP disappeared there with the focusing beam. Cowman losing mech super fast as well. Hog and Ball in all sorts of trouble unless they can regroup very quickly for the final bit of this B defense.
I mean, like I said, when Test Team 1 are winning, they're winning hard. They look like they utterly outclass Hog and Ball. It's going to be the grab in the middle of nowhere, unfortunately. It's a decent pickup there from Track, finding out Red Shell. Nice stun as well onto the airborne Dante, who has just gone into the Reinhardt. Only about 10 seconds left on that. But they're getting a lot of work done with that time charging, and will look for an Earth Shatter, I imagine. Actually, that's just the regular Reinhardt on Clone Man, my apologies. But either way, the Earth Shatter came in. So many Reinhardts.
I like that his name is Clone Man because he's getting cloned quite a decent amount here. What you are also seeing though from Dante is if you're going to pick the Rhine for the duplicate. You need to be in the right position where you're not having to chase down members. Again, a reminder that Ryan, you know, you have to have the gap closed pretty effectively, so Dante's going to need to work on how he wants to position himself when the duplicate goes in, but otherwise a very clean B take. There's not a lot of resistances there, as Jake now is going to open things up on C.
Good heavens, would you look at the time, but they actually find out Laya with Dante, who's able to get the wraparound, get a little bit in behind the shields once again. Hog and Ball kind of looking outclassed here, really struggling to get any work done on this defense, not even really getting counter trades.
They're being staggered here as well. Kurama goes down just as the tanks are starting to come up. Back in Fiction will at least respawn with them. And at this point in the game, you need to start seeing these ultimates come through. Test Team 1 is still working on their sound barrier, now available for Red Shell.
Gosh, getting that self-destruct out in the middle of things, it does at least take down Cloman for them, which is nice, followed up by the Earth Shatter from Fact Fiction, but
Kurama.
Even then, the DPSs are uncontested. Jake and Dante, that's what really matters, and they're getting so much done, keeping such a lid on these members, on the respawners, on the tanks, and on the point. They're going to cap it, 4 minutes 38 on the clock.
Kurama just needed a little bit more time. He just duplicated over the Zarya, but his team wasn't quite able to just stay on that card with him. He was pressured out super fast. You also saw, this is really interesting tech, that as the opposing Echo player, Dante's chasing Kurama down, because the other thing is, if you want to get rid of the duplicate really quickly, you are still playing Echo, you can still shred through tanks. If Kurama's at all ever below 50% HP, or you want to beam him to 50% HP, Kurama's going to lose the duplicate super quickly, and he never got the Graviton Surge. That's the key thing here.
And I think, like, in light of what we were actually talking about at the start with regards to the Zarya and how it would be sort of a prime pick for the duplicate ability, I think that just goes to show that, like, that's something Test Team 1 were absolutely accounting for. They had, like, as much as this isn't like, okay, when this happens, this is exactly what we're going to do, but, like, they had a good idea of how to counter it, how to deal with it, knowing that it was likely that Kurama would go ahead and copy Harblu. And it paid off. It paid off big time.
I want to comment about the tank choices once more. You look at Hog and Ball, you're starting to see, okay, it's going to be Orisa into Ryan now. First of all, the Orisa's not going to be a great option. Ryan is still going to be probably the superior option here for Dante, unless he wants to go over to Trax Reaper, which we need to talk about as well in a hot second. But the double shield's important because how quickly shields go down, having the second one is going to give you a lot more breathing space. Also, notice that you can't duplicate through shields. That's going to make things at least slightly more difficult for Dante.
Nice early biotic grenade, but it's not going to deter Hog and Ball, not by any measure, of course. Just try to push forward, get the Reaper in the thick of it. He eats a biotic grenade, but with the Immortality Field, that is buying them critical time. They needed to finish off Harblu, though, and having not done so, now Hog and Ball find themselves with no Immortality Field and much lower health bars. Test Team 1 utterly pouncing on that. Dante drilling down track, Laya getting picked, and Hog and Ball, it was right on the cusp. It was a good push, but they didn't quite get the kills they needed in the fraction of a second they had.
And this time it wasn't even because Fact lost the shield or anything. Both him and Cowman still had shields available. They just got angled by the Bionade from Kareev, and this is what we see. The quality of players coming through with Test Team 1 now on towards their second fight as well. Dante's already onto the duplicate, about 5% away.
As the thing, having to make the same play, but with your opponent having far more in terms of ultimate charge, is going to be really tough here for Hog and Ball. It's going to be hard for them to start getting anything done. That's Dante deep into the back line with the Reinhardt available into the middle of the Immortality Field, though. So limited in what he can do, but the Shatter is out as he comes back into the Echo. That is perfect timing as he beams down Fact Fiction flat on his back, and Hog and Ball get utterly dismantled.
So much of this game has just been Dante so far. He's absolutely showing the, I guess, the width and of what you can really do, or the verticality, you could even say, of Echo, because this is now a situation where he's flying to the sky, looking for Cloman's position, or rather looking for Fact Fiction's position, and just dropping the Rhine directly into the center of Hog and Ball, getting that Shatter down despite being charged through, is allowing the rest of Test Team 1 just to walk forward and for Jake to get some picks as well.
It's funny, isn't it? As it turns out, Dante is pretty good at Overwatch. Test Team 1, a lot in their pocket here. Hog and Ball are really struggling to make any headway right now.
In the right position to get a Graviton Surge down, though. Needs to be careful of Cowman's defensive matrix there. Was applying a decent amount of pressure, but with that going down again, the 6v5 is going to open things right up for Test Team 1.
And Jake comes around, drops 6 into the back of Fact Fiction. Absolutely outstanding. I mean, that was getting Track low with the Deadeye as Track was trying to retreat out of it. Jake barely got his headshot. I wonder how many pixels of hitbox were even available for Jake to hit there.
So this has so far been a very one-sided defense going the way of Test Team 1. And that's not even considering the fact that they have a huge time bank on board. If we even get there, Hog and Ball have so much work to do, even just to cap A. And if they get the whole map, they're not going to have much to work with in terms of time bank at all either. They have ultimates now, but so do Test Team 1, and Dante is looking at yet another duplicate.
Alright, Karama's going to have to get a lot of work done. Harblue trying to just stay as unexposed as possible.
Also hiding for the grab.
The grab is going to be a critical tool.
That's the thing, because he's not allowing Karama to get an easy duplicate. He's also just hiding for his own grab. When's that going to come through? Dante now just going to drop on both supports. Easily booped away though, Hover.
That was a nearly really a good boot by Carrots. I didn't even say it right the second time around, but a huge bardic grenade. The Earth shattered down once again. Dante gonna be able to clear things up. Karama did get a little bit done, which was at least something, but unfortunately Test Team 1, I mean, they're all over Hog and Ball like a rash right now. There's so little they can do. Carrots nearly got that bump off on the high ground, but didn't, and with that, the three members up there were just stuck with nowhere to go.
But the trades were actually good. Notice that Hog and Ball got the supports down. They had kills against the tanks as well, but Jake and Dante staying alive. Specifically Dante copying the Rhine again and getting another excellent shatter. Track now behind the tack. Well, we're using the tack visor behind the Ant Matrix. Where's the damage though? Everyone's hiding away.
If nothing else, though, them hiding away does give Hog and Ball some space on the point. More space now made from that self-destruct, but they need to still get kills. They need to still keep that forward pressure on. They need to be able to do something about the counter push coming in. Nice stun onto Clone Man, but they don't get the finish off, and he's going to be able to find his counterpart. In fact, Fiction, Kurama picked off early in the fight as well, as so often seems to happen. Test Team 1, once again, all over this fight. And Hog and Ball barely got any ground, a little bit over 1/3, and even then, a lot of that was just down to being able to zone members. It wasn't even because they were getting kills and winning fights. An absolute disaster for Hog and Ball.
This is where we start to look at this matchup, and you consider what happened on Watchpoint Gibraltar. That was a strange map. That was a strange result. You can see how effective Dante's been on this particular map. This fight in particular as well was what allowed Test Team 1 to really get such a good foothold onto C. But yeah, you have to really look at Watchpoint as the outlier in this series, because if you don't even remember that happening, this just looks standard. This looks like Nepal going the way of Test Team 1 fairly easy. You look at King's Row, very one-sided again. You almost think this is kind of a 2-0 position. The fact that it's actually 2-1 means Hog and Ball showed their chops, but they need to be able to bring them back for number 4. Map 4 coming up pretty soon, and the way King's Row went, you don't know if that's possible yet.
It starts to really recontextualize Watchpoint Gibraltar, right? Because there's like, it's almost like Test Team 1 woke up and they're like, man, I just had the strangest dream that we lost to Hog and Ball on Watchpoint. What's going on with that? I think also it maybe lends a bit of credulity to the idea that, look, it's not like Hog and Ball are terrible or anything, or that they're underperforming. Like, they did genuinely play well on Watchpoint Gibraltar, but it feels like they don't hit that stride anywhere near as much on the other maps, and also it sort of it informs the idea that maybe Test Team 1 lost Watchpoint Gibraltar more than Hog and Ball won.
Well, what I can say to that is the fact that you look at A being the predominant I guess point of action for both teams there. The fact that Test Team 1 nearly completed a hold onto A, which would have allowed them to be at a 3-0 now. Like, you have to look at a situation where that got towards the overtime. You have to consider that perhaps they should have been able to win during the overtime. The fact that they got pushed out was a bit of a problem. Hog and Ball being able to cap that, finish the entire map, and Test Team 1 couldn't do the same on Gibraltar.
Yeah, I think that's all quite telling, to be honest. There's an interesting thing as well. Like, I kind of mentioned it after Watchpoint Gibraltar. It sort of felt like Test Team 1 at times were maybe not as willing to reset as they ought to have been. They looked like they were looking to continually commit to fights. Look, it didn't work on Watchpoint Gibraltar, but I gotta say, it paid off huge on King's Row there, especially on the offense. Like, we saw how much free ground they gained. They basically kept B uncontested just because they pushed so far forward. They were all the way up into C, taking multiple fights, not just getting one, getting a few picks and being happy with that. They continued to commit, and it paid off so huge. They just seem like they have a better handle on how to apply pressure with these Echo team comps compared to Hog and Ball.
Yeah, they had something like 4 minutes 30 remaining on the time bank, which was going to just be unbearably large going into that phase of the game, and that's even if Hog and Ball could make it that far themselves. We're also into a sort of stage where, because teams now basically have their time reduced to 2 minutes if possible in the time bank, it just makes it even more difficult for a team like Hog and Ball to really get a lot done. So Test Team 1 looking pretty fantastic as we thought they would. Part of also what we saw, I don't know if this is direct correlation, but notice that on maps 1 and 3 where they dominated, it was actually Kareev and Red Shell playing together. If Fran comes back in, I will be interested to see what kind of compositions they're doing. And I pointed this out on Gibraltar, but Fran and Kareev kind of have overlapping hero pools, so I'm not too sure if that is potentially an issue for the team.
Hey, maybe. Once again, the loser will pick the subsequent map, and for the first time, no, not even that. I was going to say for the first time we have the same loser twice in a row, but that's not remotely true. That's not how math works. Or time, for that matter. So it's Hog and Ball who we're going to pick our assault map. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be Volskaya Industries. But more importantly than the specific map, I think because of how point A on King's Row went just now for Hog and Ball, I think they need to really shift into gear coming on to Assault. Like, there is absolutely a world where they just don't even cap point A on Volskaya if they're going to have trouble breaking those static defenses using the Echo.
Volskaya is a map that has a somewhat of... It's not the most extreme map in terms of high ground control, but it's got enough high ground that I think, if you're looking at Dante, especially again, the way he's been playing his Echo, the sort of positions and angles he's finding, the amount of pressure he's able to put against the tanks, not the same kind of effect that we're seeing Karama come through from his Echo. That's something I think you touched upon at the end of Gibraltar, where we kind of still need to see just a little bit more of Karama.
Well, Volskaya confirmed. My sneaking suspicion was correct. And I, again, don't believe we'll see any shifts in who actually plays the Echo. Sort of after they didn't change between the first two maps, I doubt we're going to see any changes. The one change we do see, though, is we actually do have Fran coming back into the mix of things. So I'm sort of, like you mentioned, curious to see how that's going to play out here for Test Team 1.
Ready for battle.
Alright, looking at comps now. Track is actually looking to start on the Tracer again. Part of the difficulty for his Tracer when we last saw it was due to the fact that Jake was playing a lot of McCree, and that can really stop Tracer's ability to do what she wants. With Jake actually looking towards the Mei here, that's a bit of a 50-50. Mei can still be really good against Tracer. I think he'll maybe somewhat struggle against Karama. Note that we did mention before we got into this matchup that Mei received a bit of a nerf to the endothermic blaster. Right clicks, I believe, are still pretty decent. He's going to need to rely on those.
Either way, curious to see how it'll play out. I do like this defensive setup here for Test Team 1.
It is very static,
Now,
and that's
at
something they
least,
need to consider as well, the fact that they're running Orisa Sigma. Double shield is always good against Echo at this stage of the game. With the extra Mei, you can almost consider that to be triple shield, and if Dante wants to go and copy one of the other tanks, drop some extra shield pressure. I mean, Fact Fiction is probably, again, the target, but I also would consider copying the Tracer here could be really strong. We know you can get a lot of pulse bombs while you're duplicating Tracer.
Oh, they knew they had Lyre low, rather, and Dante was really hoping to thread the needle on one of those shots, but no such luck. Nice isolation, though, on Fact Fiction. That's going to be an instant kill. And the rest of Hog and Ball tried to barrel out the other exit of that room to try and find a fight on the high ground, maybe make up for that isolation. Did not pay off in the slightest. Test Team 1 just absolutely anchored here.
And there's a lot of difficulty in actually trying to dive this particular composition. You want to go in there. You're going to see an accretion come through. You're going to see Mei put up walls, slow your entire team down. Realistically, for Hog and Ball, I'm looking at what they can go to here. Track is looking potentially for the fire. This is putting a lot of emphasis on top-down, on playing from the skies. They don't have a Mercy currently to combo with that. That means healing is going to be a bit of an issue for Track and also Karama.
Yeah, they do need to be wary of the right clicks from Jake, but at the very least, that's the only thing to be wary of. Lyre certainly needs to be wary of it as Jake finds the headshot on him, and already Hog and Ball are just going to have to maybe take 5, wait for that respawn.
And they need to find the angles to actually get the spam, and that's going to be a kill as well. Karama challenged Dante.
Brutal.
Didn't have the aim, didn't have the damage output. And Dante's just doing, you know, he's doing cleanup work right now. He's walking around the map, seeing where the flags could possibly come from. And if he can deny Track, by the way, if he stays in the air, works around Karama, and just stops Track from doing anything, which is kind of what we're seeing now, Track is just going to get eliminated.
Dante, like you said, he's done such a good job of keeping tabs, and this also is just kind of been allowed to more or less free roam. It's not like he has a lot of other members at his back. It's just no one's been able to contest him one-on-one. And nobody's grouped to shut Dante down. He's got control of the skies.
He's finding all the 1v1s, by the way. This isn't some Mercy-assisted thing. This isn't where Jake comes in and helps to the right. Dante's literally going in for a 1v1 and just straight up winning it against both Karama and also Track, who's gone back to the Soldier now. They're realizing that Dante's a big problem. They can get a pick on Dante that could improve things. So far, Hog and Ball want to go with Fact and Fiction on the ball itself, and that's not currently working.
Already down. Karama was picked off early once again. They nearly had a good trade on Kariv, who would have otherwise had a Transcendence available, but Hog and Ball just not able to make anything out of that. Unfortunately, they didn't have any ultimates that they could maybe pivot into or lean on aside from Liar's Transcendence, and I can understand not using that there. They were kind of looking for maybe a minefield or a self-destruct or like something that's going to affect where the enemy team can stand and how they can position. And in the absence of that, they find themselves with less than a minute left and still no ground made on this attack.
Hog and Ball need to find a hole in the defense, and where they can possibly get that is onto Dante. I have to mention that again. Dante, who's on half now. I'm a little bit surprised that Track isn't playing Widowmaker. Maybe it's not within his hero repertoire, but he needs to be able to find it because they can't break the double shield and the Mei, and they can't break Dante either. If they can't do either of those, they're not going to win.
That accretion barely went past Karama, but never mind all that because the fight has broken out in earnest. It's a little bit of mileage already out of the minefield. Going to take down some critical structures, and they also stopped Jake's Blizzard. This is the opening, if ever there were one, for Hog and Ball, but Dante, with the copy on Track, has already found one. Doesn't find one with attack Pfizer, and Hog and Ball have made good headway in this fight. They're waiting for some respawns, but aside from that, they're doing okay. Karama as well on the Batiste of all things does get the extra healing, the extra damage output. It's a little bit unorthodox, but I like it. Some late kills coming in for Test Team 1, but the members that are alive are low. Dante has had to back off for the point, and the respawn advantage is there for Hog and Ball. They should be able to reinforce this point. They should be able to finish this capture off.
They desperately need to heal Dante. If he can get back in here and really find an angle to put the damage in, they can still maintain the defense. Kariv is going to try his best. Fran nearly has the Amp Matrix, but she needs to be able to live here. Hablu as well with the Sigma ultimate. He's not going to get there in time, is he?
Nicely done by Hog and Ball, barely getting a little bit of a window in, but more importantly, closing that window against Test Team 1, and now looking to keep that momentum on their side. They know they got some late picks on that fight because of how it played out, and if they can get quick kills here, they might just be able to roll straight into a B cap already. Good way towards that. Up in the air goes Track, which actually just gave them more of a firing line onto those airborne members of Test Team 1. They're doing it. Hog and Ball keeping a good handle on this fight. Minefield down on the point. The kills coming through, and having barely capped A, they're going to barrel through to B with 2 minutes 30 on the clock.
And that's a classic double push from Hog and Ball. The speed at which they walk through towards that B point is on. Notice that there was a little bit of action towards A, right towards the end, where Test Team 1 wanted to throw the last few members to try and contest A. They didn't give up A. Dante was still in. He was on half HP, desperately needed healing. The opportunity was there as well. You had Fran looking at the Amp Matrix. Harblu already had the Gravitic Flux. If they could get the members to A in time, that could have been a fight. But because they couldn't quite do that, they lost too many members at A. Didn't have a defense set up at B. Hog and Ball double push from A all the way on to B and just took advantage of the momentum that they had. Got a few more members. Harblu's Flux doesn't do nearly enough damage, doesn't do nearly enough CC either to secure kills. And for Test Team 1, that is extremely unfortunate considering how close it got. How close it got to a completed hold on to A.
Dancing Robot! He's back!
He never went away.
And he's gone again.
To be honest.
The first time I saw that, I honestly thought I was going nuts, right? Because, like, I'd never seen it before. And then I genuinely didn't see it again for, like, more than a year. And it got to the point where I thought, like, did I imagine that? If it weren't for the fact that there was a VOD, I would have genuinely considered that I had hallucinated the dancing Volskaya robot.
That is one character, by the way, that Echo cannot duplicate.
Giant robot of Volskaya.
I was looking at Jake, maybe thinking about going on to something like a Sombra, but with a Sigma Orisa kind of attack. Again, just playing for the shields. They need to find a position, though, to really lock themselves down. This composition doesn't do great on the rotations, and that's where they can get caught out.
Test Team 1. Going to take their time on the way in. I want to see what Hog and Ball can accomplish. Nice catch onto Kariv. Pressure onto Laya, though. That is a 1-for-1 trade so far as Dante tries to dislodge Track, but does have to be a little bit careful. That's a nice catch onto Jake. That should be the one that truly opens it up. But Dante doesn't want to let it go away that easy. Low as he is, they're still keeping such good pressure down, and I think actually with that Hog and Ball aren't going to have enough pressure and presence left on this point. They got no tanks. Track is just way out now, and Testing one. Essentially one and done.
And the problem is, Hog and Ball, their composition with the Ryan Diva, they need to play on the floor almost. Look, they can start on the high ground, but they need to eventually go for a brawl. They're up against two range tanks. You can't just let Arista and Sigma, Cloneman and Harblue just beam you down from long range. You need to be able to look at how you want to take those fights as a 6v6, but also the fact that Dante had an early 1v1 versus Track, taking the pressure away from the rest of his team, making sure that Track was only looking at him, and then turning around and helping to assist onto damage against Fact Fiction, locks down the tanks, even though they lost Korean early. Testing one win that fight.
Now Testing one is going to make their approach on point B. This is where Hog and Ball are going to have to make up for a lot of time, but in all fairness, a good defense on B. They could still walk away with this because they at least had the benefit of fully capping out. Amplification matrix down. Fact Fiction is going to respond by just going in deep, but stunned up, drop down. Absolutely nothing gained from that one as the copy in from Kurama onto the Sigma. They're trying to get something done, but Track pressured as he's trying to run that tactical visor, will not get back into cover, and I think that's going to be it. Testing one have kind of cracked the nut open now. Couple of counter trades coming in late in the fight. The respawns could still come through for Hog and Ball, thanks to Kurama and Carrots doing a lot of work. They've got Fact Fiction back in the mix now. They're going to be able to just barely keep Testing one at bay.
This is where you have to look at compositions. Harblue's been delivering really great targets for duplicates so far for Kurama. The fact that he gets the Sigma, eventually gets the Gravitic Flux. It took him a while. He was looking at his ultimate charge. If he gets it really quickly, he saves more members. But if he didn't get the Flux at all, that would have been the cap coming through. Test Team 1, despite getting A very quickly, has been stopped up on B pretty quickly as well. They got time to work with it. They certainly have the ultimates as well. So expect a lot more now as Jake goes into Deadeye.
Good heavens, would you look at the time. Everybody goes ahead, runs for the hills. Nobody should be going down to that.
Who's in?
Just a little bit of... That's unfortunate as a start. No one went down to the Deadeye. They all piled back out of the buildings, and Testing one were ready, standing there with a baseball bat and absolutely smack Hog and Ball in the face. I mean, I don't see Hog and Ball recovering from this with any sense of ease. They might still do it, but good pick on Dante, opens the door. Immortality Field down already on the point. Hog and Ball struggling to make any more headway than that one pick that they got. They don't have that tank presence once again. Cowman maybe could do something with the self-destruct, but they got to stay on the point. Everyone ducks behind shields. No one's on the point for Hog and Ball. Testing one are going to take it without much more time than Hog and Ball.
Well, they actually walked into that one with 5 to 6 ultimates. They had about 5 and worked on the last one. Dante doesn't even use the duplicate towards the end there. We've noticed the opening Deadeye didn't do too much work, but what it does do is force Hog and Ball into unfavorable positions. Allows Harblue to actually finally get his Flux down, this time doing a lot more work. Fact Fiction has been kind of the sacrificial lamb of Hog and Ball so far. No matter what he does, he's getting targeted a lot. Dante's beaming him down super quickly. And this is what we talk about in terms of Echo. And I think in terms of tanks, Winston, unfortunately, is one of the tanks that just loses to Echo the hardest, simply because he doesn't have the same defensive capabilities. Yes, he's got one shield, but it doesn't have the same sort of HP. It's not as flexible as, say, Ryan. And yeah, Hog and Ball, look, they lost members super quickly onto that just due to an ultimate advantage, a sheer ultimate advantage, where you don't now have Kurama going for the duplicate onto Harblue Sigma and saving the day with Gravitic Flux anymore.
Let's take things on balance here for a moment, because look, that was better for Testing one than it was for Hog and Ball. That is mostly defined by how that A push went comparatively, but Hog and Ball once again showing that they do actually potentially have the stuff. Like, they did get some good fights on the defense, and they did get some good fights on the offense. A minute 20 difference, that is something you can make up for if this first A push is good from Hog and Ball.
They have struggled though. Note that they couldn't get past the double shield plus main defense before. What they needed to be able to do is find a hole in that defense, which is to be able to maybe take down Dante, or really heavily invest in a dive that can displace the tanks, although that's a little bit harder to do. Both are very difficult because Dante has been pretty slippery as well.
We need to see what Kurama can accomplish. He's gone for this big flank. He's now set up on the backside. Immediately has to start backing out though, so they can't really go for that pincer maneuver that they were setting up for.
Gotta find something here. They need to at least bait Immortality Field out. That's the beginning of something. Once Immortality Field is gone, Kurama may be able to sneak in and get one of the supports. He's kind of looking at that now. As most of Hog and Ball are trapped underneath.
I do like the plan. I do like what they've gone for. They got onto the point with the Reinhardt. Now they're looking to brawl with a little bit more of a defensive position of their own. Hog and Ball looking good so far. This is honestly paid off big time. They just pressured the point, forced Testing One to come down to them. Testing One getting a couple of counter trades in though, so Hog and Ball not out of the woods just yet. They need those respawns to come in, or at the very least need to continue to get trades, but without DPSs, now losing the tanks, not going to happen. 45 seconds left. They do still have one last shot.
I would have said overcommitment on Blizzard is the only thing that was a little bit unsure about for Testing One. They'd basically won that already. You see Fact Fiction and Cowman still just kind of stuck in the inside room near that point there. They're going to go down pretty quickly. It's going to be staggered kills as well, which is going to really ruin the respawn wave here for Hog and Ball, who, as you mentioned, have barely enough time. 20 seconds, they'll reach the point, but can they dislodge defense? Because that's what you need to work on. And look at this, you still have members. Harblue is just kind of randomly decided. Wins the 1v1 though.
That accretion catching is so critical. I could have seen Harbler going down very quickly. He was hovering around that 50% mark where Echo's beam starts really kicking into gear. And with that, unfortunately, having already lost Fact Fiction, Hog and Ball, they've already run out of steam before they'd even built up ahead of it by the looks of things. The Transcendence buys them a few seconds, but doesn't buy Track any extra seconds. And for himself, Cowman goes down. That's going to be a full hold getting completed here on point A for Testing One. Now Hog and Ball have to hold for 3 minutes 21 if they want to, at best, take this to a draw.
And they need to be able to hold one tick, which is, it's going to be a tough one. Test Team 1, from what we've seen so far, if we look at the regulation time for what they did on A offense, it was pretty quick. It was basically a one and done there. And, you know, again, a comment that they lost Kareev early. It was actually a 5 versus 6 that they won due to sheer pick potential coming through from Dante onto Fact Fiction. It will really be interesting to see what Hog and Ball decide to do in terms of compositions. The D.Va Ryan wasn't working out great for them. I don't know if they have Orisa Sigma kind of in the repertoire in terms of what they practice or what they know. It does look like they're going to go back to they're going to go back to D.Va Ryan, which, you know, if history repeats itself, this is going to be a very quick cap.
Do it, Jake. Play the Sombra. Do it.
He needs to. He almost...
I don't think he needs to, but I want him to. I want him to. That's all. I just want it. That's all I want for Christmas, is for Jake to play Sombra on this map right now.
The other thing that can happen as well is Test Team 1. If they don't lose
away.
Kareev this time early on, they can just walk on through. A 6v6. If they win 5v6s, you can bet they win 6v6s as well. Fact is the guy you need to keep an eye on. Carrots needs to keep him alive. Immortality Field will be absolutely critical to making sure that Fact doesn't get instantly beamed down by Dante.
I'm out of here.
Just scouting. Jake's going to come out on the McCree. It's already a good bit of pressure, though, onto Dante. Doesn't quite go down, but he does have to duck for cover for a hot second.
And they can take their time here. They don't need to rush things. Test Team 1 can find the right openings. You can see they're already pressuring Shield. Once that goes down, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Fact is going to lose that, but Dante's going to lose his life.
Critical find on Dante, though. That's going to give Hog and Ball some legs here. They lose Cowman's mech. They need to actually get more kills. The respawns will start to favor Test Team 1, but with the Immortality Fields, Hog and Ball can't look for anything else. They lose Cowman here. They at least found Fran, but this is a very tenuous position for Hog and Ball.
Test Team 1 need to be getting more picks than they lose. You do have a slight advantage from attacking. The closer respawn distance is going to allow you to reinforce just that extra amount faster. Cowman's actually kind of come back on the Wrecking Ball instead. Again, he just needs to get back to point ASAP. That may affect the quality of this defense. I don't know that Ryan really works with the Wrecking Ball that well. And Dante, if he can get away with a little bit more, you should see the tanks under pressure soon.
That's going to be the commitment with the Immortality Field around the side. Jake did get brought low. Kurama getting that health reset as he goes back into Echo form. He had used the Orisa to try and keep pressure on, but that's Cowman getting dropped down. That's going to be the opening as Kareev finds out Carrots. The Transcendence is there, keeping Fact Fiction topped off, but even then, they can't get enough done. He's going to have to get so many kills, and he is dead. Track is the last man standing. Tac Visor is there, but it is all for naught, and with that, Test Team 1 absolutely no trouble. Took them a little bit longer. I really respected the patience, the willingness to reset when they didn't quite have the advantageous position, knowing that they had time to come in a second time around and picked up the point with no difficulty.
And you have to look at where Test Team 1 we're pushed as well. We talk about Watchpoint Gibraltar as being the outlier here. They can now look at their map too as exactly what it is, an outlier, to say that the other 3 maps were basically how you expected it to go. One map where they lost, which was, to be fair, pretty close anyway. Going into Grand Finals now, we expected Test Team 1 to be the favourites, and going to the Grand Finals, well, this is a team that I think has the potential to win the entire tournament, based on what we've seen.
Yeah, they're looking really solid. I think as well, on top of this, we're seeing Dante just really have a handle on Echo. Look, Dante's a great player as it is. That obviously helps, but just knowing the limits, right? How many times did we see Dante out in the open as long as possible, then ducking for cover with like 10 health left? It happened so many times. And in among all that, Dante was getting a lot more damage done because he was able to maximize his sort of time of effectiveness as Echo. Also willing and able to take 1v1s and successfully win 1v1s very, very reliably. I mean, if we are highlighting Echoes for this tournament, which obviously we are, like, Dante was an absolute gem of that match.
Yeah, one of the best flex players I think that we've seen over the time of the Overwatch League. And obviously there's some amazing players over Overwatch League in general, but at least into this tournament, you look at how strong this roster is. You've got ex-pros, you've got really well-known streamers, really high-level streamers as well. You've got Kareev in there, who is an absolutely amazing player, one of the top players in his particular flex support role. So yeah, you are seeing the difference there. You're seeing how much Dante can do, how much work he can do. And, I mean, whoever they play against the Grand Finals is going to have to be really contending against the standard now set extremely high.
Yeah. And that whoever is still to be determined. I believe that other match may still be ongoing, but this one is certainly done and dusted. Test Team 1 punching their ticket straight to that Grand Final. Slight bump in the road on Watchpoint Gibraltar, but, take it on balance. 3-1, you'll definitely take that. And with that, they're going to be taking their trip to the finals. We are going to be meeting them there in a few short moments. We are going to take a bit of a break while our other semi-final wraps up, and then we're going to be bringing you the Echo Finals. That's all I was going to say. But yeah, Grand Finals, Echo Showdown. See you on the other side. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with us through that break. We are back with the Flash Ops Echo Showdown Grand Finals. We, of course, got to bear witness to Test Team 1 marching their way through to this match, and they're going to be coming up against a team known as Scion. Before we go any further with that, though, I am, of course, Matt Pixie Carroll, and joined with me here is Kevin Averill Walker.
And you might have seen us from such shows as Overwatch Contenders Korea, Overwatch Contenders Pacific, and Overwatch Contenders Australia. So yeah, we did a little bit of Overwatch, and now we're here to do a little bit more Overwatch here for the Echo Showdown Grand Finals, like you mentioned there, Pixie. And if you're wondering why we're in Overwatch League right now, well, guess what, guys? After we're done here with the Grand Finals, we're actually going to be revealing next week's hero pool. That's a pretty big deal. You're going to get to find out on this stream today, right after the final, exactly which heroes are going to be out of the pool.
So you definitely want to be sticking around for that one. Don't just close the stream out as soon as the final is done. This is where the reveal will be. This is where the news is going to happen. But before any of that, we do, of course, have that finals, and let's go ahead and look a little bit into that, Kevin. Of course, like I said, we've got Test Team 1 versus Scion. Now, it was Scion versus KEKW that was the other semi-final. What do we sort of have to say about that? Like, what do we have to say about Scion in light of that?
Well, I mean, look, that semi was pretty hot because I think we both expected KEKW to come out on top. You look at rosters, and for a tournament like this, where it's a bit of a mishmash of players from all sorts of different areas, as a reminder, only 2 pros from Contenders and Overwatch League are allowed to be on your team. Everyone has to play Echo at all time. Team KEKW had guys like Kabaji, Craggy, KSF on the team. Aspen was there as well, ML7. And this is a team we expect to do really well. And Team Scion Esports, I think, is a team that not many people really know about. This is a team that actually came top 4 in breakable barriers in a just at the end of last year, and they've mostly floated around they mostly been floating around tier 3 in open division. So I think a lot of people have not really seen them play. This will be their biggest match ever in some cases, versus a team like Test Team 1 that has Jake and Dante and Kareev on the team. They've got really big name streamers here. They got some really big name ex-Overwatch League players and current Overwatch League players, and also Contenders level talent. So this is gonna be pretty tough. It's certainly David versus Goliath.
Yeah, so to recap a little bit on that Goliath, let's go ahead and take a look at Test Team 1. You sort of already mentioned it, but this is a pretty stacked roster, to say the very least, and one we're not at all surprised to see here. Of course, Jake, Dante, Harblue, Clone Man 16, Fran, currently Franyada, just why not, Kareev, and also on the bench, Red Shell, and we have actually seen them switching out between their supports throughout their semi-final. I reckon we'll see that continue.
Yeah, and for the side of Team Scion, our Cohesion side, Gummy, Firewolf, Lucamino, and Grapes. These are not names that you really know of yet, unless you've seen Breakable Barriers, but I'm sure these guys will make a name for them now. They've had to take down some really big competition to make it this far, and now heading into Grand Finals, it's best of 5, first to 3, winner takes home 10k.
And we start, as you can probably see and or hear by now, on Busan. Curious to see how Echo is going to play out on Busan, actually, because Busan is one of those maps where we've seen some interesting team compositions over the time that it's existed in the map pool across its various stages. I'm curious to see how Echo fits into the picture.
So far, I'm going to speak to Test Team 1 because that's the team that we've been watching so far in this tournament. And Jake on the McCree, Dante on the Echo, that's already been expected, but where the tanks really sit is where I'm interested in. Note also that it's going to be Fran and Kareev starting again, no Red Shell for this opening map on Busan. Harblue and Clone Man playing the Sigma Orisa, and what I like about the Sigma Orisa is the fact that if you use a Gravitic Flux, guess what? A bunch of enemies are on half health, and guess what? That means Dante can beam them all down.
Hey yo. It's a really nice combination. We've seen Dante play phenomenally. Scion going to be rolling out. They want the Torbjorn. They're feeling it.
Torbjorn's definitely meta right now. I don't know how it's going to go against what Test Team 1 are doing. There's a lot of shields there. Dante can also beam down at that turret fairly quickly, and not even just using the beam, by the way. Just using the tri-shot is pretty effective. Does mean Scion are playing a little bit more defensively, and they're going to lose Gummy straight away.
That is actually a 1-for-1 though, as Cohesion does at least trade off Dante. I have to say, that's removing a real big piece from the board for Test Team 1. Sai staying alive under some pressure there, very critical. They may still be able to get some work done, but they are pretty hard pressured here. Testing One in all this have been able to capture the point, so they are in the better position here, strictly
We've
speaking.
seen them win 5v6s already. Lucamino down with 5, which means this is surefire now going to be a team fight win. They've already got the cap. They're just running away with it now. They're just getting as much as possible. Dante's back as well, and he's absolutely fragging.
They seem to just very casually walk on top of Sion there. Like, it wasn't even really a fight. They just kind of stepped over them. Really bizarre, I felt. Sion didn't seem to put out much resistance.
Pretty similar to what we saw against Hog and Ball just previously. Opening map was pretty one-sided. Sion don't even have really any ultimates yet. Looking at Dante, Duplicate is already available. Very good targets on both sides. This is actually a sort of matchup where you would even target the Torb with the Duplicate here, get a very quick Molten Core. Gummy is probably going to be the target though. You want the Sigma with the Duplicate.
Amplification Matrix out from Fran. Just try and get some more damage done. Keep Sion at bay. Extend out that time on the point. You'll charge that ultimate up relatively quickly as well. See how Sion take the second approach. They didn't really get much done the first time around, but that's already a big start as they take out Clone Man, looking to press further in. Dante kind of filling that gap of the Orisa a little bit, but immediately drilled out of that stance as Cohesion goes for the Sigma. Nice rock on Jake, knocking him down. Testing One and making this an interesting fight to say the least. They are keeping some good pressure out, but Cohesion just getting the Gravitic Flux up now as they lose side. Not going to get much done with that copied Sigma ultimate by the looks of things, and unfortunately, that's all she wrote for Sion's push there. Bit of a failure, and they don't really have time on the clock for another one.
And a lot of this came down to the fact that Fran used the Ant Matrix fairly early, didn't get to combo that up with anything like the Deadeye, and then when the push comes through, Sion get an opening pick. Testing One have to fill the gap, like you mentioned, use the Duplicate to copy on the Orisa so they can still have the main tank in there, and now we're looking at the final fight, already getting a pick.
That is a nice trade-off again, being able to find Dante. The Molten Core this time around is going to be able to create a bit more pressure on the point itself, but Sion still to get a lot of work done. That's that work getting done. Heads to the desk there. Testing One getting melted down, as it were, by the Molten Core. Sion have managed to grab that point at the 11th hour.
The difference there is that Dante goes down. If somebody else goes down, if Jake goes down, one of the tanks, one of the supports, that's still doable for Test Team 1. I think because Dante goes down, that's the most important player, the most important carry now on the squad. That's the one player you can't afford to lose in that trade. You trade that one for the Orisa, not worth. That's not a 1v1 that you really want to be losing. For Sion now, finally taking a bit of control, 25% and counting. They get Dante again, so this should force now a full reset for Test Team 1.
And I'm so glad that it was this same player that did it, because I was just about to mention Cohesion has done such a good job of keeping a lid on Dante. We sort of talked about that over the semi and in the break. Dante surviving on low health and able to find 1v1s. Cohesion is not letting Dante get that same room to breathe.
The charger coming down from Clone Man now. This is going to charge up the ultimates fairly quickly. Gummy going to be responding with his Gravitic Flux. I don't know if he really caught anyone there. The damage wasn't quite available. Harblue took down half his own HP, I guess, from that. Still alive.
Oh, nice accretion and the finish off onto Jake. I'll tell you what that Sigma ultimate did end up doing, the Gravitic Flux, is it burned a few cooldowns from Test Team 1, like the Immortality Field, but that doesn't really seem to be bothering them as they kind of walk onto the point. And once again, good start for Sion, and they just get absolutely walked over once Test Team 1 start pushing in.
That should be it. Firewolf will be able to maybe touch just in time. Look at the overtime ticket. It's not going to make it at all. You even see Sai going onto the Tracer, and you look at what Dante does in that previous fight. Sticky Bombs catches 2, gets to double kill. One of those was on his counterpart, Cohesion, on the other end. We've already said how big of a factor it is to lose your Echo early in fights. You see it on both ends. Whoever loses an Echo early really struggles to come back in.
I think that is very telling, to say the least, but I have to say I am at least impressed, as I mentioned, with Cohesion's ability to take out Dante relatively reliable. We've often seen that, at the very least, being a trade made early in fights, and that does really help Sion out. Unfortunately, that help a match win does not make. They did still lose that map, so they're going to have to do all that and a little bit more if they still really want to be overcoming Test Team 1
Both teams are going to be running roughly the same thing. Jake will be teleporting his team forward, and I expect him to maybe go back onto the McCree. He's actually going to go in the legs instead. I think people have been asking for this. Where's Jake and where's the legs? This is one of his signature heroes. Surely Jake is going to absolutely floor Sion.
And it's actually mirrored with Sai right now, who as well has come out on the Soldier 76. Fact, this is Yeah, this is an exact mirror. It took me a second. For some reason, I didn't recognize Sigma.
Oh, Jake's in trouble, though.
Oh, Jake taking some pressure, able to catch around the edge there before he goes down.
I think he just wants to draw pressure away from the rest of his team. We're now beginning to set up shop on the cap itself. Both teams are doing that, but where are the shields coming through? That's the most important thing as Dante goes down, making it 5v6 again.
Immortality fields aren't available, by the way. Both have been taken down. With that, Hablu gets pressured out. This is what happens. You've enabled your DPSs that little bit more in cohesion, putting on the Dante boots. They're living on such a low amount of health, but taking out his counterpart and enabling the team, creating those openings.
There's really two ways to play the Soldier right now in this matchup. One is to take the off angle, which I think is the preferred way, because that's the way you're actually going to get damage in. Jake's going to get instantly blown up by the sticky bombs. This is bad news already for Test Team 1. The other way I was going to mention is actually play behind shield, but Jake's dead.
Yeah, can't really take that option. That being said, though, speaking of shields, Firewolf does go down to Dante. That's the other major pick that Cohesion maybe needs to deal with, but it's not going to have that opportunity as Dante finally pays one back. Test Team 1 looking good in this fight. Now just need to start taking the ground, capturing the point itself, finishing off these kills. I don't see Sion putting up much resistance at this rate. We'll maybe just try and force out a little bit of extra percentage, and without the Sigma, they lose that pressure on the point itself. Cap comes through for Test Team 1.
The only comeback there would have been Lucamino playing the Transcendence, which he didn't quite have at the time. 87%. Kareev's got one in the bank currently for Test Team 1, who are pretty stacked on ultimates, expecting the full 6 stack to come through pretty soon. Climan's on 76. They have control of the point, they have positioning as well. Dante spamming through, so is Jake. And Sion now, the difficulty will be actually pushing out from spawn.
They, like you said, don't have a lot in the ways of ultimates. Just getting some up soon, but the ultimates come out first for Test Team 1, and already it's a lot, and they are big, and they are impactful. Sion trying to rally from that one now. Luckily, no one having gone down. They barely had the right ultimates up at the right time. Dante back into the standard echo, goes down to Sion on the high ground with a great tactical visor. Jake trying to match that one now, but Cohesion getting pressure onto Hardly. Jake finally getting an angle in onto Cohesion, but I think that might not be enough here. Test Team 1 slowly but surely getting dismantled member by member, and they had a huge advantage at the top of that fight, but in that window where they had that advantage, they didn't get the quick fight win. Sion rallied exceptionally.
And part of this is due to the fact that Test Team 1, they didn't intercept the rotation coming through. The difficulty for Sion was actually escaping from spawn, a similar situation that Test Team 1 now find themselves in, with Jake also swapping towards the McCree. They have to find a position where they can actually walk out of spawn, set up their shields, set up their tanks, and then offer the counter damage. Dante also needs to leave as well. They get the opening kill, and Dante's on the floor now.
Oh, there we go. That's some good ones coming through for Sion. Able to keep a lid on those DPSs. Excellently done. There was that early pick onto Lucamino, and you sort of look at that and go, oh, that's rough, but again, the DPSs are enabled. We see what happens when that is the case. Late death onto Cohesion, though, may hurt in terms of resets, but they at least traded that for Jake, and now time starts to run thin for Test Team 1.
That's the thing. 83% and counting. Test Team 1 need to be able to push up through fairly quickly. No ultimates on either side now, except for a couple sitting on 90+%. Harblu with the Gravitic Flux actually is going to be able to open the door for his team. As they push out onto the side, they need to also touch the point.
Aside from the tactical visor, that Gravitic Flux is the only ultimate available, and it doesn't actually catch Sai. Between him and Cohesion, who was also roaming free, they were actually able to take down Harblu, and because that was the entire game plan for Test Team 1, get the Gravitic Flux, pivot onto the point. With that disrupted, they couldn't do the second part of that. Couldn't get onto the point. Really nicely handled by Sion.
The time pressure is the 7th member of Sion for that particular defense. The fact that for Test Team 1, it's not just a pure 6v6. You need to also have someone make sure that you can trigger the overtime. I believe that was actually Dante, who doesn't reach it in time for whatever reason. A little bit unfortunate. But even though if they had gotten the overtime, we look at how that fight went. Harblu not connecting the Gravitic Flux in its entirety, going down as well. Test Team 1 were definitely against the ropes. You feel that, and now it's 1-1 as we head into the final round here in downtown.
And I think Sion have, so far at least, really showed their chops. Look, the Torpedo didn't quite work out in the very first round here. They haven't gone back to that since, and they are having a lot more success, relatively speaking. Opening scrap now is once again mirror matchups, but it is Grapes losing the Immortality field very early. Sion are going to have to respect the fact that they don't have the same survivability.
Oh my goodness, look at the damage coming through. It's just going to come on Dante, but actually Cohesion gets one as well. There's a few more kills that Test Team 1 get, and you should feel that they use this advantage to be able to push through a cap early.
Trades Still trades, that's the crazy thing. I believe technically Testing 1 have one more kill, and that's probably going to be all they need as a difference maker. Also, one of those kills was on Cohesion, where Dante was able to run free, and again, we see the difference in impact.
And that's the difference. Dante was still alive, he was still applying pressure from the back. He's really keeping the backliners of Sion busy this entire time. Jake now is flexing on Sai, who's had a pretty decent round on Mecha Base, but Jake's really dug his heels and dug the legs in now for this third round of Downtown.
Yeah, welcome to Downtown, baby. This is a completely different ball game. So far, Sion really slow on the maneuver here to reapproach this point. Already about 30% gained for Testing 1.
Dante's positioning on the top as well. You can see how the area control is going for Testing 1 so far. Dante's applying pressure from all sorts of angles. This will surely be a kill, or at least it's going to push Sai back.
Meanwhile, in the front trunk of the fight, Firewolf taking a lot of pressure as Dante looks to go back in on the side. Changes to Zenyatta. Hello. Does get back out of the Zenyatta form, but that was an opening that Sion had taken advantage of. They push forward. They find Harblu just shy of a Gravitic Flux. They have a numbers advantage. As I say that, Cohesion goes down to Jake, so certainly not out of the woods just yet here, Sion. They need to make something happen.
Look at Dante's HP. He was sitting on 1 HP for so long, which means he's not part of this fight. We are aggressing now from Team Sion, who are walking onto this point. Harblu is going to try and counter with the Flux.
They got to wait out the Transcendence there from Karib. It has now just run out, and Luke Mino was able to buy the time here for Sion as the Tactical Visor finishes off Dante. So critical, the off angle that Sai is able to pick up here. Low on health, but he's already done the work, and with that, Sion are finally going to find their approach to the point. That felt like it could have maybe happened a little bit more quickly. They could have maybe pushed in a little bit sooner, but they do still win the fight, and that's what counts the most.
A lot of awkward things happening for Testing 1 here. It started the fact that Dante decides to duplicate the Zenyatta of all players. Perhaps he couldn't find another target in that time. Perhaps he just wanted to get a quick heal. But ideally, you are going for one of the tanks, and of those tanks, you want to be taking the Sigma once more. So Dante will need to look for that on his next ultimate. Testing 1 push back through.
And it's already an early death onto Firewolf. The Supercharger getting a lot of work done here for Testing 1, who so far are having absolutely no trouble just walking over Sion. And we've seen this before. Sion, like, it's like Testing 1 just decides to go forward, press the go button, walk onto Sion, and Sion get completely dismantled. They get steamrolled even as they split apart. They struggle to find trades. The cap comes back through for Team 1, and now time is a big issue for Sion.
And it feels like the double shield for Sion just completely disappeared as soon as it was there. Looking at timing now as well, Sion have to get to point super quickly. Gunning's already going over to the Wrecking Ball. They've got a couple of ultimates. Cohesion going down, those bad news that could cost them the round.
Okay, so Firewolf does get there, does get the Supercharger down. That is an opportunity. Nice pull off the high ground. That's going to be a little bit of a save with the Transcendence, but Jake had already gone down. 1 for 1 so far, but with Dante copying out the Orisa, they have that Supercharger, they have the extra damage, and they do have control of the fight and, by extension, the point. Nicely done by Testing 1, but I'd be lying if I didn't say Sion really made them work.
This is what you have to be careful of as well. Looking at the results from our other semi-final, Keck W took that first map away from Sion as well, that opening control. Guess what? Sion won that 3 to 1 rather, which means they won the next 3 in a row. This is absolutely not over for Testing 1 or Sion. Everybody's still in the game, but for Testing 1, business as usual from what we can see, from what we have seen in our previous semi-final as well.
And I feel like a real difference maker was a lot of those defenses for Sion. Like, not even just when they're holding the point, just when they're in defensive positions, when Testing 1 are making an aggressive move. We saw it right at the top of the game, right? Where it was actually Testing 1 in control of the point, and Sion were figuring out how to approach. Then Testing 1 went, oh, well, let's just fight them. Let's go to them. And it's like Sion just evaporated. There was no real resistance put up. Something about that particular line of play really seems to rattle them. They don't seem to have an answer.
Well, they at least managed to get Mecha Base through. That's the consolation prize, a silver lining for Sion. Heading to map 2 now, they can use that to do something, because we've seen what can happen for Testing 1 on that map 2. Looking back on our previous semi-final, they did lose that to Hog and Ball, and it was close as well. You give them that for Testing 1 and for Hog and Ball, but when we got out of the it was close area, quote unquote, it suddenly was a complete wash. When Testing 1 are winning, they are winning hard.
Yeah, I mean, as the saying goes, right, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I'm also disappointed in myself for going through an entire semi-final not even thinking of the fact that Hog and Ball would be a great name for a pub. But with that, we'll go ahead and take a bit of a break Believe we're going to be moving forward into our second map in just a few moments. I say break, that's a lie coming right out of my lips. But we will be moving into
break being
our
like we're
second
just
map,
kind of
and it
waiting
is,
for the second map to pop up and then
Yeah.
we're going to get in.
Yeah, like the break is gonna be like, you know, take a breather, like, hey, forget about it, don't worry about, I don't know, it's, anyway. We're going into Watchpoint Gibraltar is what I actually want to say. Second map, and it will be loser pick. So this is Sion's pick, and I almost wonder if this is maybe with respect to the fact that Hagen Ball actually won on Watchpoint Gibraltar, and I'm actually lying about lying because we are going to be going to a brief break, so we'll catch you on the other side of that. Don't go anywhere. Alright, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us through that break. That was, in fact, a real break. We did just have one player have some tech issues, and I believe that has been resolved, so we should be getting into that Watchpoint Gibraltar I was talking about in just a few
I hope you're not
moments.
lying again, because if you are, there's a really great meme song about lying that I'd like to share with you after this. I think you already know the one, though.
don't.
But in any case, look...
I do know it. I live by it. It's actually my alarm. Reminds me to stay honest during the day.
And there's nothing I like more than being honest and being correct. That's what I live by. Look, Test Team 1, looking pretty fantastic so far. That's the truth. But you also got to say that Sion have been kind of showing their chops. I mean, there's a reason they're here in this grand finals. There's a reason why they're here instead of the other team, which had some decent names on them, Team Kick W, who fell to Team Sion. So, moving into this, there is the possibility that the upset could still happen.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it before we went to that real break, and that Test Team 1 did lose Watchpoint Gibraltar against Hagen Ball, who in many other respects looked more or less outclassed during that semi-final. Sion, I would say, have already put up a better fight than Hagen Ball in general. And I wouldn't be surprised if they could maybe get a little bit of the same out of Test Team 1 on Watchpoint Gibraltar, pick up that win, take that map away, and draw the series.
What I think we've discovered here on Test Team 1, and this will be confirmed when they pick their actual composition as well, is they've really nailed down a good composition to work the Echo around. And that's mainly coming down to A, using the Orisa, but also using a bit of Sigma. Now they are actually starting with the Wrecking Ball first by what we can see available on the stream. On the other hand, Sion are going to be sticking with the Orisa Sigma to start with. And part of this reason is, again, I have to reiterate, the double shield is really strong, because if you only have one shield, it gets melted almost instantly. The second one will buy you a lot more time. Jake's going to go back on the Hanzo. This was a decent pick versus Hog and Ball, but as a reminder, it still wasn't quite good enough for Test Team 1 to actually take it out.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Hanzo. Like, when it was working, it was great, but as soon as they lost that early bit in the first point, like, the Hanzo never really recovered. It was more of a liability than an asset, but we'll have to see how it plays out, because this is clearly what Test Team 1 feel works for them on this defense.
The other interesting thing that Sion are doing is they're maintaining the tour that we saw into Busan. They're also actually playing Brigida instead of a regular Ana or even Zingara Cohesion, thinking that he maybe could have got an early kill while the tanks, doesn't do so, but they are going to continue to push.
This at least gives them some ground as they move into the car wash, and that's a little bit exposed there for Hablu. Doesn't have a good way of getting out of that, but Jake does at least trade one off on the backside of that fight, finding Lucamino. I like the turret kind of playing rear guard for this cart, stop that back flank coming in with too much potency. Sion have honestly maintained pretty consistent forward pressure. As I say that, Jake does manage to find that back pressure in spite of the rear guard.
And Jake
turret.
can just play point guard here. He can just be the one sitting behind shield, making sure that this cart isn't going to move forward. Dante is going on the back line. Always has to be considerate of his own HP as he does go down, and that's going to be an issue for Test Team 1 now.
Yeah, the respawn is faster for Sion, so Sion's already back with them. Low as he may be, he's with the team, and that still gives them a numbers advantage. Even now, it's only even. That's going to be Jake getting picked off, so Sion maintaining that numbers advantage as Cohesion now unlocked. Able to find Clone Man, looking to get damage back onto Hablu, finish him off. Kareev totally isolated from his team. No good firing line there to keep his members topped off, and with that, Sion going to roll the payload through the point.
And it looked like Kareev had a decent angle. He dropped the bio nade down as well. Him and also Fran was so close to ultimates. Jake goes down again, still hasn't got his Dragon Strike available. This is now Sion just pushing on through, cleaning up Stag and members, and Test Team 1 are gonna have to go for a full reset here. This is already reminding me of the second map of Gibraltar that we saw in our semi-final.
I was going to say exactly the same thing, with the key difference being Hog and Ball capped point A in overtime. Sion did it with more than 5 minutes left. This is a disastrous situation for Test Team 1 as Kareev goes down again. They are struggling to bring a full 6 to bear. Dante in trouble, barely able to slip out of that one.
They have to play against Flux now. They have to play against a duplicate. Dante will be there soon. In fact, the rest of Test Team 1 just need to get these ultimates online, which they finally have done. But they need to also now aggress on the cut. Here comes Hablu.
It's going to be a minefield down and a Dragon Strike breaking across, and it is getting some work done. They at least dropped the Immortality field, but in that brief window it was down. Sion did a great job of healing themselves up. They've weathered the brunt of the storm. It is a 1-for-1, but losing Cohesion is so critical. They're also not able to fight on top of that Molten Core. Test Team 1 barely finding an angle into that. Even then, Sion have made it a tough fight. They will walk away from this one with the L, but they have so much time to come in and reset and regain this
So much of this came down to Jake actually firing down Cohesion's duplicate super quickly. In fact, it was so fast that Cohesion lost his duplicate. I don't even know what he copied there. Test Team 1, they had the ultimates available. They started to invest in. We saw the Ant Matrix come through as well. Dante holding down the fort. The second supercharger coming on through from their team. And that's going to be a lot to work with. Kareev going down is an issue. He was on 99%.
Yeah, another early pick on Kareev. That's a real heartbreaker. That being said, Sion haven't quite struck while the iron is hot, as it were. As I say that, Dante goes down. Even with Kareev coming back in with the Transcendence, I don't see Test Team 1 recovering from this with all that much ease, if at all. Kareev is going to come into the rescue, though. Maybe able to save Harbour. That'll be a critical one, because they have at least found a kill on Sai. Can they get anything more? That's Lucamino. Dunzo. Grapes getting pressured out. Jake popping off here, keeping the team alive as Dante back into the mix. And that brief window waiting for Karif to come back, it was just long enough for Test Team 1 to
Jake
hold
was
out.
sitting on 1 HP for so long there as well. He gets a double kill, then picks up the third one. Karif doesn't end up catching him in the transcenders. Jake was on an off angle somewhere, and he needed to be able to hold down the fort while Dante was respawning. That was the one death that Test Team 1 really couldn't afford to lose, and because they had that, it cost them so much. It really meant that Jake had to step up, and he did.
Shift over from Sai now onto the Soldier. They need more active pressure in the fights they want. Well, they want what Soldier brings to the table, more or less, and Test Team 1 on the back foot. Potentially.
Hazen's at 90% now.
Nice one,
Dante
comes down
still
with
at
Pablo.
100. So there's a 1-for-1 trade to open this up with.
That's the thing, it's still a trade at the end of the day. Clone Man down though. This is a bit of a better start now for Sion. The rally out as well gives them a few more legs in the fight. As the copy onto the Orisa, Dante having to pop off to the side for now, and I think with that, Test Team 1 are going to be routed from this fight. It's just Dante, more or less. He's going to try, he's going to fight valiantly. Harblue does also pick one up. He doesn't want to give this one up too easily, but Sion do have ultimate control of this area, and eventually Test Team 1, if they keep throwing bodies on the point, they're going to give up far more than they could ever hope to
They are
gain.
trying to just buy time here. We're starting to see the clock go down ever so slightly. They're not done yet, by the way. Harbu's back in. Immortality Field is going to try and keep him alive. At some point, this will break. At some point, Test Team 1 will have to respawn, and they will have to reset for C. Whoever's alive now should probably consider that, because this will be the cap.
Yeah, I was going to say, my fear is that if they don't do that at the right time, they're going to give up a lot of free ground on C, because they were going to lose that B fight, all things considered. And that has exactly now come to pass. They've lost B, Sion have got the cap, they got some extra late kills as well. Test Team 1 are still actually waiting for respawns now.
Sion are going to change Lucamino over to the Batiste. And at this point of the game, I was also going to comment, but Harble is definitely over to Sigma now. He's dropped the other characters that he was playing. In fact, he's been on Sigma for a while, to be fair. And that is the comp that you do prefer. Test Team 1 have some lost ground to make up here. Here comes Franz at Matrix.
Nice and aggressive here. Sai looking to run out the attack visor, but wrap around there. They lose cohesion. They just didn't have a handle on the firing line. There was nothing gained there by Sion. Huge investment for... I mean, not even very little. Like, literally nothing.
Test Team 1, rather. Karib, you can see fragging out there. Using the Matrix, and this is something that Zenyatta does really well, especially if you got Karib on the Zen. One of the best flex supports that we have in the world currently. Sion losing that early momentum, and we just did need to see Test Team 1 be able to reset properly, hold the angle, hold that corner specifically. Shield is breaking pretty early, but Supercharge is going to come down and hold the fort.
Yeah, big supercharger as well. A lot of pressure coming out already, and the front line is absolutely evaporated. Sion are really struggling to make any headway now on C.
Best part about this for Test Team 1 is they're charging the rest of their ultimates. Worst part is, for Sion, is they're not able to use the ultimates. As soon as you see the Ant Matrix come through, Sion are thinking probably don't take this fight anymore. You see how fast their members melted. You see how much extra damage it also gives to players like Dante on the Echo. The fact that now your beams hit even harder, your sticky bombs are even more deadly. Everything is just that much better. Less than 50 seconds now remaining. Sion basically have to get this in the next push and a half.
They're getting aggressive. It's going to be Cohesion copying the Sigma, but Jake finds two with the Deadeye. And even with that duplicate on Cohesion, even with those other ultimates, the rally committed and the things they could have used, they know they're not going to get anything done. Cohesion does at least throw out the start of a Gravitic Flux, because hey, you might as well, but doesn't get anything for it. That was a real heartbreaker for Sion.
Graves actually swaps from the Brigada onto the Zen now, and that's an option you have to take when you start to consider, okay, the Zen has a lot of excess healing that you can be able to put out here, and Matrix being used from both ends. Test Team 1 want to hold their ground, and Jake is making his presence known again.
Gummy down already is just such a rough break for Sion. They have very little left in the tank to get aggressive. They're not even on the cart. Even if this goes to overtime, they've still got to make ground before they're even in contention at this point. And I don't quite see it working out for them as Test Team 1 just have them all over. It is an absolute wash towards the end of that defense. Once Test Team 1 rallied themselves after losing that B cap, they did not let Sion get any more ground. Those were some of the most one-sided fights we've seen so far.
And this
today.
is what comes out of losing B extremely hard for Test Team 1. We've seen this versus Hogan Ball in the semifinals. We see it again now versus Sion, where they lose A in a manner where they have staggered deaths, which allows the attacking team to continue applying pressure towards towards spawn. Now, if you run really quickly onto B, you're going to be able to catch the choke points for the defenders respawning, and that just means it's so difficult for Test Team 1 to re-aggress onto the point themselves. They had staggered respawns, and then towards the end, they were just trying to buy a little bit more time. There were some decent fights in the middle there. Dante was dying a decent amount as well onto B, which probably didn't help Test Team 1, but once we started to really hold the corners, once the ultimate started to really be charged for Test Team 1, they were basically unstoppable.
We'll have to see now how Sion fares on the defense. This is maybe the bigger fear I had for the team. Look, kudos to them. Good offense in certain places, especially through A and B. C was very much the other way around, but Sion has looked weaker when Test Team 1 have played aggressively against them. Sion haven't put up much resistance when they've been in defensive situations. I like to think that will change on like the defensive side of an escort map, but my fear is that it won't.
Grapes is starting on the Brigida now. I want to take a bit of time to try and explain this one, because Brigida is there for the dive factor. Okay, the armor packs are great for throwing onto your Echo at long range, but what the Zen does with Kareev playing it is it allows you to just drop a Harmony Orb on, and that's a little bit more consistent healing over time. Jake is going to go back onto Hanzo. He's found great success on A so far, and that's a turret instantly down.
Just putting that pressure on that defensive replacement. Nice catch onto Dante, though. That's going to give Test Team 1 a little bit of pause.
Dante's the main guy you really have to look out for. You can see they've already completely backed off. Pablo is just going to go straight into the segment. They're not going to waste too much time here. They know what comp is good. And what we've seen in the tournament, what we've seen from both teams playing, is you want to be the Orisa Sigma, you want to have the double shields, you want to put a lot of eggs in the basket of the Echo, and that's why we wait for Dante.
Oh!
Jake down, though. I don't know if Test Team 1 go on or if they wait.
Brilliantly done using that halt. I mean, the cart is in a position where the fight isn't, so that does give Test Team 1 a little bit of room, at least for a moment, but they do have to give up that position now. And this has so far been a good bit of slowdown from Sion.
Looking at ultimates here, no one's super close just at this point in time. Maybe Lucamino is the guy you have to really talk about. Dante down again, though, is going to be, unfortunately, another reset unless Jake pops off.
And I mean, look at the difference here. When the halts, when the crowd control is coming out and hitting Sion, they're getting Sigma shields in the way. When it's happening on Test Team 1, they're not quite able to defend Jake, to defend Dante. It's sort of the opposite side of the coin of allowing them to sit off to the side, be on flanks, try and get those picks, try and be enabled. They don't have the same defensive tools when they're getting caught.
Grapes using, or rather, Lucamino using Ant Matrix straight away, allowing Grapes to have a bit of time to get back in here. Fran will respond, but they need a better angle. They can't actually see much of the defense at this rate. Test Team 1 are finally starting to push around the corner.
This is a nice position here. They utilize the Amp Matrix to keep those DPSs and those tanks nicely topped off so that they can maybe make something happen. And they, in fact, do. Dante, now that he is enabled, finds his counterpart, drops down onto the backline with the Orisa, going to drill down the Immortality field and absolutely emaciate the members around that cart. Sion getting forced off point A. About a minute less than what Sion had here as they come onto B, so I want to see a better defense out of Sion than what Test Team 1 did.
They should be able to, because they still had Cohesion alive who they can fall back with. They have the rest of the 5 members who all die fairly close together, so no staggered respawns. They all get to come out as 6 now, and they already get Kareev. This is another opening pick.
Man, how many times? Like, Kareev dying on point B. Name a more iconic duo. It's been a real tough break for Test Team 1 that's happened weirdly consistently, but they do have the ultimates. Gummy, thank goodness for that Immortality field, huh? Because he was just getting washed by dragons, and unfortunately, because those members were low, all it took was for the Immortality field to drop and Sion start to feel the heat, but starting to answer back now with their own round of ultimates. It's going to be an absolute slog of a fight here, but it's a slog that Sion are slowly coming out the top of. The war of attrition has been won. Test Team 1 are backed off the cart.
That's bad news here. Test Team 1 actually had Kareev running in with the Transcendence very early on, trying to alleviate some of the pressure that the Ant Matrix from Lucamino actually provides. Test Team 1, though, get most of the members out alive, so they didn't feed too many ult charges over to Sion, which means they do get to use their own Ant Matrix now to try and aggress on. Jake is going to be able to do wonders through that. Hanzo into Ant Matrix is absolutely deadly, and so is Kareev.
Oh, and it already is as well. That's before Sion was even able to commit critical ultimates. They had so many more. Test Team 1 only had the Ant Matrix. Sion, they had Molten Core, they had Supercharger. They even had the Duplicate if they needed it, if they needed some kind of X factor in that fight, but not able to deploy any of it. The Molten Core coming in way off time, and Now, as it happens, Testing One have capped B with a better time than what Scion
And they got
did.
staggered kills as well. We're nearly at the finish line here.
This
Look,
is
it's
brutal.
only at the corner. Which means for Test Team 1, if they can just maintain pressure towards the spawn of Scion, they're going to get free cart push while that is happening. This is now the potential to end the game right here.
I'm really seeing that. I'm seeing it coming alive right now for Testing One. Even if Scion are able to get this next fight, they've got so much more work to do. Extra Sigma out, though, and they're able to find Blue. That does force Testing One to back off just a little bit, but that is the duplicate used by Cohesion.
Also
now.
the supercharger used, so it's kind of like two ultimates being expended. Test Team 1 lose Blue, so they don't need to be able to push, and they're happy to just play for the resource game currently. They lose Fran as well, which means, okay, this is definitely a full reset. Allows Scion to get some ground in, but also allows Test Team 1 to maybe, perhaps, get an ultimate advantage. Again, knowing that they knowing that they already had two used by the opposition.
And thank goodness Fran did go down, because Cohesion was on 8 hit points. I guarantee if it weren't for the fact that Testing One had to back up, they would have finished off that kill. And that would have probably been the beginning of the end for Scion. Instead, they get an early pick onto Blue here. They eliminate that immortality field. Nice pull into the kill onto Jake. Scion looking like they're hitting their stride a little bit on this defense.
This is the problem now, because if Test Team 1 want to lean into an ultimate advantage, which they no longer have, Blue needs to be able to get Flux off. He died while using Flux, because as soon as Matrix came down, Scion just beamed through and completely annihilated him. You're asking, okay, where's Korea's Transcendence? Even in that kind of scenario, Transcendence healing is not going to be enough to offset the extra damage output coming through from Matrix. That is how strong that ability is, that is how strong that ultimate is, and Scion have a foothold onto C now.
A lot of work that needs to be done here. Oh, early pick once again. This time it's Dante that goes down, and Testing One needs to start deciding how much they want to commit into these fights where one member is getting picked. They are deciding we don't want to commit much at all, but they will slowly but surely lose time if they keep making that call.
They keep losing members. This is the
Another
big
kill
problem
onto
now.
Blue.
Testing One can't get 6 together at the same time without losing somebody, and they need to push out, and they need to use the supercharger. That is their only realistic advantage here. If they use supercharger while Firewolf doesn't have one, they will push Scion back and break some shields. At the same time, Fran will have Matrix available while Lucamino doesn't have one either. This is the advantage that Testing One need to use.
That beam's got to get something done, but the Dragon Strike is not quite enough. Now Scion start answering back. Rabbinic Flux down. They need to deal with the Supercharger. Molten Core out is going to give Testing One a bit of a challenge as they push this cut further forward. They need to get something else done here. They get rid of the Immortality Field and finish off Firewolf. That's big. Amplification Matrix needs to have a big impact for Scion. They're desperately trying to get these members out. Nearly getting Blue. Nearly getting so many members, but never quite finishing it off. Jake still free firing means they're going to find the opponent's Sigma, and unfortunately that was the last bit of presence they had on the point. No one else got there quite in time to contest. That really came down to the wire at the end there. I have to say, I really thought Scion could do it.
Still had the possibility. Cohesion nearly had the ultimate. They still had a few members alive. Look, would that have made the difference? Would that one duplicate have made the difference? I'm not too sure. But what we can know is, look, this B point opened up so hugely by Jake. We talked about how big the Hanzo could have been. This is where Jake was mostly alive. But heading in towards C, started to get a little bit quiet, especially when Test Team 1 were consistently losing a member through picks early on, not really being able to set up a 6v5, or rather even just a 6v6. As soon as they actually leaned into the Supercharger and Matrix advantage that they did have, that's where they could finally get a push going.
And I look at that whole map, and I wonder what would have happened there if Scion had had a more successful C, because they had an incredibly successful push on A and B, and then got completely stonewalled on C. They got nothing done there. I wonder if they'd had a bit more space, even if they hadn't fully capped out, if they just had a bit more room to work with, if their defense could have eventually held. It felt like, on balance, they played better most of the time, but when Testing One were playing better, they were playing way better. We'll have to see if that continues, because 2-0 up now for Testing One, despite the closeness, despite Scion really giving them a run for their money. They are still in that winning position. We will be going to a brief break on Matchpoint. When we come back, we will have what might be our final map of the tournament before the hero pool reveal, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back then. Thank you very much for sticking through that brief break. We have, as I said a moment ago, Test Team 1 unsurprisingly at match point, or maybe it should be surprising because Sion have really not made this easy for them. However, they have yet to actually pick up any points of their own.
And that should have been a map that if you are Sion, you expect the comeback to happen. Again, looking at how the semifinals unfolded, Hog and Ball did extremely well on Watchpoint Gibraltar compared to the other maps. Now, that may just be their team, so don't want to take too much from that game over to this one, but you're already in a match point scenario. Test Team 1 looking at 2-0, a potential 3-0. Look how Kings Row went for Test Team 1 in the semis. They absolutely obliterated, and that could happen again now in this final.
It does feel like a slightly different beast, though, because Hog and Ball completely failed to cap point A on that King's Row, and I almost wonder how different that map might have gone if there had been that point A cap, if maybe Hog and Ball could have had a successful push because of how well we saw them do once they got underway on Watchpoint Gibraltar, but that all becomes maybe a little bit too conjectural at the end of the day. I want to see Sion, again, at least make it tough.
I don't want to have too much transitive property here between those two series, but what we can bring over is what Test Team 1 did, which is, again, how well they played on Kings Row overall, which is to say they were able to get an insanely good time bank, 430 still remaining or something along those lines, while completely holding eggs. So they basically, on both ends of the deal, on both offense and defense, they were fantastic. Sion being 0-2 down, being that they've had some good chances, they need more than just some good games, they need more than just some good moments, they need a good map where they actually win.
Defending first, Sion have a lot to live up to. Like you said, about 4 minutes 30 the Test Team 1 were able to get last time they were on this map. We'll have to see if Sion at least makes that a little bit harder.
They're changing their lineup somewhat. Harblew's going to go on the Zarya this time around. We saw it work very well for Test Team 1. In their other match, Sion sticking to what they know best. It's back onto the Tor, back onto the Sigma Orisa.
Also worth noting, Test Team 1's red shield back in over Fran. Sion getting hard pressured. Lucamino low but not down, as Harblu is actually the first casualty. Dante pressured, so Sion able to absorb that. They could not have deployed that immortality field any later.
Dante's flank here. If you can get a trade coming in, that would certainly help Test Team 1. At the same time, though, they could also just afford to reset, wait for Harblu to respawn here, get Dante in a position where he can maybe get a pick. This could be the one they're looking for.
Maybe looks for Sai, doesn't quite find it. Instead, gets found out by Cohesion as Jake goes down the front line in the fight. And Sion, so far, decent defense, just finding good picks early on and not really taking too much pressure. Nobody really going down. Harblu, late death as well.
Resources have been used, though. We do see, okay, both Lucamina going down, also Immortality Field was used. And look at the trades coming through. As soon as Dante comes back in, that's Grapes and Gummy to follow.
That was absolutely absurd. Everyone dogpiled onto Clone Man, who sat in a corner with his shield up on like 100 hit points or maybe even less. And everyone just like four-headed their way into that, just threw themselves against that wall. Like, it wasn't even like he was putting out damage. Nobody was getting close enough to deal damage to him. The rest of Testing 1 respawned, dogpiled onto the back of Sion, who was so distracted by the smoke and mirrors of Clone Man. That was one of the most bizarre fights I've ever seen. But Sion not going to get booms twice. That's a huge Earth Shatter. But because of those early kills on the tanks, Testing 1 can't follow it up. Spicy, but when the dust settles, Sion have got that successful defense.
That was the best anticlimactic Earth Shadow I have ever seen. All 6 from Sion onto the floor, and not a single one of them went down. Test Team 1, I don't know what's going on here. It looked great, but the result just wasn't there. Now they need to fight tooth and nail to regain possession, regain territory here. At least they've got card control.
That's going to be a Molten Core out from Sai. They drill down Clone Man with that. Test Team 1 already heavily on the back foot. Late catch onto Jake as well. Test Team 1 not able to make much ground with this payload so far.
He's asleep. Don't quite collect that kill. Sion now rushing towards that card. Archway is being held. Test Team 1 have mostly been held up now. The only ultimate they're realistically missing is Clone Man's Earth Shadow that he used earlier. Kareem will have now to boost soon. Dante's got the guy on occasion, and now he's got the flank as well.
Watch out, it's flankiata time. Doesn't get much done, but it does at least reset the health, and with that, Dante is able to survive. Critically low at one point there, but that's his second kill now onto Lucamino as they push forward with the sound barrier, with the Graviton Surge, even throwing out Jake's Dragon Strike. I wonder if maybe they're going to swap some of these members because they're looking to march towards C and hopefully complete the cap all in one fell swoop.
That's absolutely disgusting coming through from Dante, despite the fact that he chose Zenyatta again, not recommended to be fair. He instantly gets fragged out as Zenyatta. He just dies, but he lives on like no HP when he's back into Echo form, gets healed up. The rest of Test Team 1 walks forward, Dragon Strike to annihilate the defense, and now Sion are on their last legs on C.
The thing is, Sion's defenses have been really solid. They've held against Team 1 for a good long time. And then suddenly, Test Team 1 get a great fight. They flatten Sion, and they get a huge amount of ground all in one go. We need more consistency out of Sion.
They have ultimates to play with, though. That's one of the things they can really lean into. Harb stunned up. He's going to go down long as Dante. Cloman turn around. He gets a triple shatter.
Shatter out. They're really committing big into this, but Lucamino is there to the rescue. So I guess if nothing else, Cloman did force out an additional ultimate, but I mean, it's taken so long for Sion to finish any members off. I wonder if it's even going to happen at all. Investing even more ultimates now with the Gravitic Flux. They finally finish off Clone Man, who spent, I'd say, most of that fight under 25% health. I mean, this is absolutely absurd, but when all is said and done, Sion have had a good defense. Suddenly now the grab in the other way because it took so long. Those ultimates stack up. They get available for Test Team 1. They come back in, they deploy them, and they get an absolute banger of a fight.
No Transcendence available from Lucamino means that Graviton Surge into Dragon Strike is an instant team wipe. Dante now going to do the cleanup on the sides. There's a few remaining members and a turret. And they have to regroup here. Sion is who I'm talking about, but they're consistently down one or two members. And Test Team 1, this is where you expect them to really make up for lost ground.
Dante takes the reset. Thanks to the slightly closer respawn, Sion do get to regroup just a little bit, but even then, I mean, if it hadn't been for that, I don't see them winning that entire situation. Now already Testing 1, they haven't even got Dante back just yet, and already Cohesion is down. Now Dante is back with the team, and Testing 1 is slowly but surely, inexorably marching forward. Harblue looking to push around to the side. Nice catches coming out, but they do get counter trades on the Grapes and Sai. And again, it's this big, messy brawl. In theory, this should favor Sion, who have the closer respawn, and I think that may just come to pass. But, I mean, even then, Sion, they're losing so many members at so many inopportune moments. Everything is a struggle just to stay alive.
So well for Test Team 1 though. You wonder why Harblue's taking a flank with a nano boost. He's dragging attention away from Sion and getting a bit of a pincer play, a pinch towards Sion where they have their attention completely divided between, do we look at Harblue, do we look at the rest of the team? That's not enough though, unfortunately, for Test Team 1 as Dante goes for the duplicate onto Zenyatta again. Once more, not recommended. He goes down straight away.
Blue again taking a lot of early pressure. Mortality Field is out there for Sion, keeping them in the mix. Not anymore though. Does go down. Jake, big catch, able to find Cohesion out. That's a nice early start for Test Team 1. Looking to push in with that Gravitic Flux. Channeled out from Harblue, slammed down. Can they finish that off? Yes, they absolutely can. Now just looking to cruise over the finish line. Sion, it's a big uphill battle and not one I see them winning. Lucamino down, Cohesion down. Sai, not quite able to get into the mix there. Barely holding it out is Firewolf on the Wrecking Ball, but I don't see that lasting for a whole lot of time. It's just trying to run down the clock as best as they can. They know that that is the game plan. They're not really going to be able to turn this back around. Testing 1:21 on the clock. Not as good as what we saw against Hog and Ball, but still pretty commendable.
It does mean they're going to have a competitive time back nonetheless. 3 minutes worse than what we saw previously, but I mean, I think, again, that is a matchup now where we can comfortably say that Hog and Ball probably just weren't playing the right compositions. Sion, for the most part, are playing mirror to Test Team 1. The big differences are coming through from the Torb, and a little bit of the choices on the support line as well. And I suppose we might as well add in that Harblue was playing Zarya for quite a while before finally swapping back to the Sigma. Now, Test Team 1 on the defense. This is the real test, because this was where they were able to complete a full hold against Hog and Ball in the semi-final. Sion, if they can get past at least that, they'll have a real shot.
Ready.
And now the true test. Hold fast or expire.
I'll be honest,
all
the
I had to
reference
add.
kind of flew over me a little bit.
That's really unfortunate. Everybody, tweet at Avril what that reference was.
And then when no one does that, it'll be because no one knew the reference. That's fine.
No one got the reference. If no one gets that reference, I would be shocked and disappointed. At any rate, testing one, like you said, if they can repeat that defense success, then even though Sion put up a better fight than Hagen Ball on their defense, it won't matter. It won't make a difference. But Sion did put up a good fight, and I expect that to translate to the offense, where in general I think they performed better anyway.
So no, that's actually Kariv playing the Batiste this time around. There's no Ana, there's no Zenyatta. Red Shell's here, surely just to speed his team up. Red Shell we haven't seen particularly much in the series so far. It's the first map that he's actually had a chance to play on. So Sion going in for that first push, already losing their turret.
Do at least gain a little bit of ground, a little bit of space. Testing one now looking to push back. Sion just absorbing that pressure. Nobody going down just yet, even as Firewolf did get a little bit low. And it's going to be Sion's turn to push back in. Both of these teams, I expect, will just kind of tug of war over this point. Harblue, though, big pressure. That could be an opening.
Good HP bars as well. Dante's definitely received a decent amount of pressure, but look at this. Sion have already had to use Immortality Field. It instantly goes down the place to follow.
That's so rough. That was where the commit needed to be. They got Firewolf low. It forced the Immortality Field. Testing one knew they had the upper hand. They absolutely pounced and drilled down the Immortality Field before anyone could be healed back up, and then finished off a lot of low health members. Very nicely executed.
This is where the defense gets out of hand, because they got a lot of kills there. They got a lot of ult charge. Dante and Jake and Kariv as well. Let's just take a look at the whole team. It's only Red Shell that's kind of off. Everyone else is fairly close as Sion now kind of pushing in with their own ant matrix.
Jake's got an idea. I wonder what it is. That one's going to rake across the side. They do scatter. They are able to avoid and survive it for the most part, but now having to push back in, that's going to be a brilliant Earth Shatter out of Clone Man, and finally it's one they're able to do something with. I'm reminded of the one they got on their offense earlier. So far, once again for testing one, the defense has been ironclad, and now that they've got ultimates, they're just easily rotating through them one by one.
You have to look at where Test Team 1 can defend, though, in terms of what they have remaining. Red Shell will finally have a sound barrier soon. Harblue also has the Gravitic Flux. This is what they need, because Sion, despite losing those fights, have also been banking. They've been banking for a couple now in a row, and all of their big ultimates are about to be online.
They're going to have to make something of those ones. Cohesion's going to come out with a Reinhardt. Nice early pickup there onto Clone Man. Harblue's Gravitic Flux not quite getting much of an impact, and they also got Red Shell just before that sound barrier could be available. That was a very clean commit there from Sion. Like you said, had banked up the ultimates. In the end, only actually had to use 2 of them, and it ends up being a very clean fight. But they need to have an absolute cracker of a push through.
And the difference there was Red Shell ending at 95% before going down. Harblue already did the opening work, which was to use the Gravitic Flux to slow things down, including getting Cohesion in there such that he couldn't really use the duplicate to get mileage on the Rhine. And now the opposite Flux to come through, the sound barrier to counter, and Jake's ready to strike.
This has got to be it, right? Unfortunately, the sound barrier has already run out. Jake has to find the right time for that Dragon Strike. Probably roughly now with that amplification matrix out. Drives it down the middle, but he himself has gone down, and the Dragon Strike finds nothing. This is a big window for Sion, and they're not going to let it pass. They've already found Dante. It's just a matter of time now before they're able to finish off these tanks of Test T1. Immortality Field does extend that time a little bit. Sion going down a little bit too far forward. Sion can't let this one get away from them. They need to have a fast and sturdy push through this entire B point. They're finally starting to close out this fight now.
Which is why Sion also committed the supercharger. They are having to overcommit to that particular fight around archers just to get the cart underway. Test Team 1 knows this. They knew they didn't have to invest any further. They got the extra utility out there. They got the extra resources to be spent by Sion, and now they're looking at another ult advantage fight where they can use Flux again. They can use their own Ant Matrix, and that's going to be the difference maker.
This has got to be a real make-or-break moment here for Sion. They have to keep this momentum on their side. That's already a 1 pick onto Cohesion. At least a trade, but not a great one, as a huge Earth Shatter comes out. Going to be able to charge some members out of the Immortality Field, finishing it off as well. No trouble there for Test T1, and that is another brilliant Earth Shatter out of Clone Man.
To be honest, these have been very impressive so far. Yeah, we can meme about the one that he didn't kill anybody in, but so far, every other shatter since then has been absolutely incredibly useful. Test Team 1 have made such great mileage out of it. You can see the slowdown coming into effect. Sion, despite having ultimates, they are always caught in situations where they need a big ult advantage to finally get some distance in. Their Carters are definitely not in a good position where they are really looking at a fast speed push anymore. They're losing a lot of time, and they have to get past this corner.
This has got to be it for Sion. They've got those ultimates banked up once again. They need another quick, clean fight. So far, it's just structures being taken down. Both immortality fields off the table. Dante finally has the copycat Sigma ulti here. Pablo has already committed his. Trying to get rid of that turret. They will be able to take that out. Dragon Strike across. Few kills coming through for Sion, but more coming through for Test Team 1. Many, many more, and a late frag onto Luke Mino. Jake absolutely showing what he is capable of. And Sion, all of those ultimates used for no ground gain.
Dante stays alive. He copies the Sigma. He drops his own flux. Note that Cohesion decided to copy the Rhine. Now, that's a decently copy. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the right position to really just dive in and start swinging. That's what you want to see when you duplicate a Reinhardt. And now Sion with only 60 seconds, the last minute here. If they get held up, that's their Grand Finals hopes completely dashed.
And that's all it could take here. Just one more great defense for Test Team 1. One more on top of so many that have preceded it. And another Earth Shatter available. Might not even need it. Cohesion's already down. Sion, they need to back up now. They need to get away alive. They can't afford late kills. They have so little time to reset. Test Team 1, they want to take a fight way in advance to the payload. They don't want Sion to have that opportunity.
The only places where Sion have won is when they've had ultimate advantage. That's not even available anymore. They've had character changes. Sion has gone over to Mei. Gummy's already onto the Zarya. This happened last fight, just for your information. Dante now has perfect opportunity to copy whatever he wants, and not unless he goes down.
That's so big, and what was otherwise a very measured and clean retreat from Test Team 1. Dante, a bit too exposed for a bit too long, goes down. That might be the only opening Sion need with this amplification matrix out as well. They have the cart in their possession. Clone Man is waiting for the time. A lot of barriers that have to go down before he's going to get this, and they are aware of his position. Someone else on testing. Oh my goodness, he gets it anyway! Absolutely enormous. This man is unstoppable. Brilliantly enabled by his teammates. Jake, no trouble cleaning up. An absolute steamroll of a final fight. Just when you thought Sion had it, just when you thought Clone Man's luck had run out, another banger of an Earth Shatter, and that is going to be the Grand Finals, easily tidied up by Test Team 1.
And they were tested, indeed. Their name says it. Dante, look, he had a great matchup, but when he went down right in that final fight, the door swings open. Sion, they see their window of opportunity. They start to tank this one, and all hopes were lying on the shoulders of Clone Man. Can he land another Shatter to save the day? Can he put the team on his back and make sure that Test Team 1, we're going to get that 3-0. He does it. He lands at Shatter beautifully. Dante comes back out, gets a bunch of sticky bomb kills, and everything is as usual for Test Team 1. Still in dominance, still absolutely, completely destroying the competition. 3-0, Sion got close, but as we've said in the series, close has not been good enough for them.
Exactly, close does not a victory make, and I mean, incredible play. Look, you can expect it, I guess, from Test Team 1. We talked about it. The roster is stacked, to say the least. But even then, like, the chops we saw out of, especially Clone Man towards the end, like, the talent across this entire team was really, really strong. I think maybe if there is one major beat, if there is one significant thing anyone could walk away from here, it is never let Dante play Echo, right? He absolutely outclassed everyone he played it against. Even when Cohesion was getting a lot of mileage, even when he was able to take out Dante at critical moments, Dante, on the whole, got so much out of it. We really see the value of those extra flexible players who can swap over to a tank and then play a tank brilliantly while they had that ultimate running. I feel like Dante has put on an absolute masterclass in Echo.
And let's also give props over to Team Sion, who came all the way through to the Grand Finals, beat a lot of teams with well-known players on them. Notably, Kick W was in there for the semi-finals. This is also a team that has been floating around Tier 3 in Open Division. Also played in Breakable Barriers for NA when that happened last. And they made it to top 4 there, so they've had a few decent results now, considering, you know, open tournaments as they are. I'm actually very excited to see how this team kind of moves through their own sort of Tier 3, Tier 2 journey. Maybe we'll see them in contenders one day. That could be quite exciting for them.
Yeah, definitely some players you want to keep your eyes out for in the long run. But I don't want to have too much then on here. I don't want to have too much of a cooldown because we've still got something very exciting coming up. And that is going to be our hero pool reveal for the coming week. But before we do that, we are going to go to a quick break. Definitely stick around during that break. You do not want to miss this. Don't go anywhere. And with that, we are back, and it is time for what I would like to think is the big moment. Not to discredit any of these teams or the tournament at all, but there is, of course, that big announcement that I know a lot of people are waiting for. That is what the hero pool is going to be for the week of April 20th. Before we do any kind of reveals, though, Avril, do you want to go through what the hero pool was for last week?
As a reminder here, what we've already seen in the previous week cannot be banned again for this week's hero pool. So that has been McCree, Widowmaker, Reinhardt, and Brigitte. Those 4 are safe going into next week. And as a little fun tidbit, I want to mention that McCree and Widowmaker have been banned together at one point in the first opening week. McCree's been banned every single opportunity that he has been available to be banned. So he's basically banned and then unbanned and then banned and then unbanned again.
Just flip-flopping, right? Just alternating week in, week out. Also, as well, let's go ahead and take a look at what heroes are actually eligible to be banned for this week. We're going to take a look at some of their play percentages on the support side. I think this is like one of the most standout things here is Ana at 77.9%. The rest of the supports, Mercy at 22, Moira at 21, just below 22% actually, and Lucio at 19%. So like a much narrower band there, far more consistent, with Ana just totally blowing the rest out of the water. The tanks are relatively even top to bottom. Sigma up at 33. You've got Orisa 29%, Winston at 22%, and it's sort of that, again, similar band. The lowest we actually get is Roadhog at 17%, so that's the eligible bands there, all relatively similarly played. We've even seen that a bit across today, right? We see a big variety in the tank lineup, and then to round things off on the DPS side, our eligible bands here are Tracer, Ashe, and Echo at 25, 20, and 18% respectively.
Yeah, so these are definitely impacted by everyone playing the heroes as well, so, you know, this is why Echo's on there. We saw a lot of Echo obviously today from this tournament, but that's because we had to play Echo here. Ana's the one that I think is very interesting. 77.9% is ridiculously huge. So, you know, the difference between that and Mercy, as was mentioned, is just insane. I think for the tanks, it's been very even. I think what we can gather from tanks at the moment, it's just been pretty healthy. Everyone's playing a bunch of different tanks, and of course, the 3 possible DPSs that are in the pool, which means 2 out of the 3 of them are gone. Only one hero between Tracer, Ashe, and Echo will actually survive the bans coming into this week, but that's enough of that. I'm actually going to get into it now. I know exactly what they are. We're going to reveal this one, so hang on to your seats. Number 1 coming through is actually going to be Tracer. The tank is going to be Orisa. The support is going to be Moira. That means the last DPS. I saved it for last. It's actually going to be Echo. Ashe survives. Echo's gone. Tracer's gone. And Orisa, Moira are also out of the pool.
Oh, my poor heart. All of that Echo we just saw, all of that excitement, I'm like, what's this going to look like? How is this going to... all of these great things. Look, it doesn't mean we're never going to see Echo again, but certainly for this next week, we're not going to be having any Echo whatsoever. That's a little bit of a heartbreaker, but maybe the converse side of that, I suppose, is like, what is now notably unbanned again is McCree, right? Like... yeah, we lose out of the Echo, but hey, McCree's back, everyone. Enjoy yourselves.
To be honest, in some ways, it's kind of healthy that we don't see Echo too early, just kind of shoved into the Overwatch League. I think most pros would actually prefer a little bit of extra time to sort of get used to Echo, to try just kind of play around with her a bit more, and actually, you know, walk into scrims, have the practice in there, and then once we see Echo unbanned the following week, that's when we get to see the pros actually use her and actually, you know, well, assuming that she'll be available for Overwatch League, that's when we can start to see some real high-level usage where all the pros get to kind of have their turn to try Echo out and see what they can do with it. But to be honest, I'm kind of okay with looking at this list so far. McCree needs a bit of breathing space. May is available, and when you have McCree and May available together, I do wonder, does the May-Cree comp come back in? Because that has been forever really strong so far for this year.
Yeah. I like to imagine that we will see that, and you're dead right about the Echo, right? If anything, it gives those teams that extra bit of time, because obviously the following week Echo is guaranteed to not be banned, so it becomes a possibility, assuming it is eligible to be played in Overwatch League in general, which I think it might be by that point. Don't hold me to that. But at any rate, I think you're dead right about the sort of the McCree situation. jury's out on whether or not we're looking forward to that. I mean, that's a lie. I love watching some good McCree. I really do. I'm a sucker for good McCree. It's really satisfying. I'm still working on that McCree cosplay, by the way.
I think, by the way, I just want to point out, I think a lot of
Riverboat
support
McCree.
players held their breath there. I know there's a lot of Ana mains out there. I personally don't like to see Ana out of the pool because I think she is probably one of, if not the most highest skill capped support hero among the entire pool. And most people enjoy both playing her and playing against her. A lot of support players are probably okay with Moira being gone. A lot of support players would have probably not enjoyed if Lucio was gone. So, on that regard, that's probably fine. Orisa being gone, I think most people probably won't care too much about that. Does mean Ryan is going to see a bit of a spike. Does mean Winston's going to be seeing a bit of a spike. Does mean that you're unlikely to see as much Sigma because the Orisa-Sigma duo is really big. I also want to say, because there's no Orisa, strangely that also means Doomfist might go down because Doom somewhat relies on Orisa for Hulk combos.
Yeah, the old sort of Holt punch, the 1-2 alley-oop kind of situation, whatever you want to call it. I think maybe another thing to note there is obviously with Brigitte back in the pool, you've got some other things slightly more cleanly enabled. Yeah, exactly. Like I think on the whole, we're looking at a pretty solid week. Like when I sort of think over the variety of team compositions that are going to be available, the sorts of things we're likely to see, I think this is going to be a good kind of almost baseline, like gumboot standard kind of week. Nothing too crazy in or out of the pool. And I think we're really going to see we're going to get some solid metrics between teams in places where we maybe already don't have them, right? Like, things are going to be solidly put to the test. How well can you just play a bog standard game of Overwatch?
And I think that is going to be broken down into two specific compositions. Again, we already mentioned May McCree. I do wonder if May is going to see a lot more playtime, considering that her regular left-click auto attack has been significantly nerfed, the Endothermic Blaster. So that's basically the only major nerf that you really want to consider for May. Still good, though. Still a good hero, in my opinion. The other composition that we talk about has to be coming through from Dive. Playing Dive without Tracer might be a little bit tough, but look, Doom and Genji and a bunch of other heroes are kind of still in there. Brigitte's back in, like we mentioned, so we'll see if Dive really works without Tracer. That's probably the biggest problem here, but aside from that, it'll probably be a mix of Dive and also May McCree would be my guess.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that ends up playing out, though, across the next competitive week. But for this, that has been everything for the Flash Ops Echo Showdown. This has been exciting and interesting and fascinating in a lot of different capacities. It's going to be a little while yet, I imagine, before we're going to see an Echo copy a May in competitive play. That's really what I'm holding out for personally.
Please no.
But with that, if you if you have any final thoughts before we send this one off, Avril, please share them now.
Again, once more, big thanks to all the teams that stepped up to play in this particular event over the 2 days here. Flash Ops has been amazing. Look, Breakable Barriers is a fantastic event. Echo Showdown is once again just a great event. I hope all of you guys are excited to play a little bit more Echo. Get those extra sprays in from all the drops and stuff if you've been watching along. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like you said, thank you everybody who tuned in, and from all of us here involved in this tournament, in this production, it has been an absolute pleasure and a joy. We'll see you at the next one, or if there is no next one, we'll see you when we see you next. Thanks very much for tuning in, and good night.